what's happening, everybody? What are you doing? It's Tuesday. Hey, everybody. It's Tuesday here in America. May the 5th be with you. I think that's what we say that. We say that for the Star Wars. This is the anniversary of when they released Star Wars, the film, May 5th. When it hit theaters like a Death Star bomb, like a bomb launched directly from the Death Star. Darth Vader remember the movie pushes the button and he goes, "I'll see you in hell," and pushes the button, and then they shoot the bombs out of the Death Star, and the Luke Skywalker, as he falls, drops to his knees, goes, "No!" And then the whole planet blows up, and you're left wondering, did he make it? Did he make it? They made another movie after that, and he's in it. So I can, spoilers for 50 years ago, Luke Skywalker makes it off of the planet after the Death Star blows it up. And he's missing like a hand. They got him. He's injured. They had to put a robot hand on the guy. But that's cool. They got robots. So, droids. Droids, the copyrighted term for robot that they came up with for the Star Wars. That's this week's Star Wars history lesson. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We're here to talk about, mostly video games, but you can't just talk about video games anymore. I mean, what are you doing if your video game website isn't also talking about, movies and television? What the fuck is even the point? Who wants to? Video games are for punk asses, right? If our website doesn't cover the television shows, then who will come to it? Fucking pathetic. Sorry, I was looking. I was poking around and looking at the news stories and stuff, and just ran into just poking around at different video game websites. Sites with game in the title, which there are still multiple of those. And just seeing big filters up there for you want to learn about movies? It's yeah, not from you. I would go to a movie site. It's the internet. You can just go wherever for that shit. Why would I turn to fucking Games Radar for coverage of television shows? It's not TV Radar. I suppose if you wanted to market it, and this is when GameSpot wanted to, when the Phantom Menace trailer came out, they wanted to post it on GameSpot, and I said, fucking no. What? This is a video game website. What's wrong with you people? It'll do traffic. I don't care. For what? Yeah, we can start posting pornography to the website all day long if you just want fucking traffic. What? Okay. I won that fight, but obviously not the war, because every one of these fucking websites, IGN gets away with it because at some point they can just stop claiming that it ever stood for the Imagine Games Network, and just I don't know, it's IGN. What does IGN stand for? Snowball something. I think that there's probably actually if you wanted to do that, and I think if you wanted to try to stand behind it in a holistic way, the way I always thought you could do it is okay, yes, we're going to cover these things, but it's coming from the perspective of video games and video game players, and yeah, we're covering some of this other stuff specifically in this way and for this audience. But no one ever, it just became it's all the same geek culture bullshit, and it would never, no one ever really thought it through that way. It was just we're going to start covering this stuff because we think it would do numbers, and we already cover Marvel video games, so why not Marvel movies or whatever, and it just kind of fell apart like that. Anyway, that's been my morning, is looking at that and shaking my head. How's it hanging out there? It's 5 a.m. My son taps me on the shoulder, waking me up. I'm unhappy about it. He's trying to watch television at 5 in the morning. I'm like, no. What? Go back to bed. Go back to bed. Like, the remote won't work. I'm like, fine, good. That's not, it shouldn't. I should find a way to disable all of these remotes in the night. And I come out to, kind of solve this, and his older sister is out there too, and they're trying to watch Snoopy. The kids got into Snoopy. Or at least my son got into Snoopy. And I said, yeah, turn all this off. Well, you go to bed. You should be asleep right now. I should be asleep right now. Why are we doing this? And so that's been kind of figuring out how that happened and where we went wrong as people that led to this moment and all of that. But yeah, I don't know. They watched some Snoopy, and he's interested in Charlie Brown, and so we sat down and watched over the weekend. We watched it's the Great Pumpkin Charlie Brown, which is their Halloween special, and it was funny, man. Stuff sneaks up on you. There's something about like the nature of having children is like there's a very emotional kind of thing that happens alongside that where you're just like, I can't believe I'm now sitting here with this, showing this kid this thing that I saw every year for years and years, and you don't think you're like, I haven't thought about the Great Pumpkin Charlie, but sitting down watching it was this realization of just like I have like every word or the cadence, the absolute cadence of the performances in It's the Great Pumpkin Charlie Brown, like seared into my fucking brain. Like the way fucking Linus says every fucking line out in the pumpkin patch. It was just fucking, it was like, I did not expect it to happen. And then it happened. And it was like this incredibly emotional thing all at once that it was just like, man, yeah, I guess this thing really somehow was a big part of growing up. Not that they showed it all the time. I mean, there wasn't really a lot of Peanuts cartoons on, but like every single Halloween that special was on, and eventually you've seen it a zillion times. Yeah, it was a really weird. It's one of the. It's cool, man. I don't know. It's neat to see like kids get into stuff, and it's not that they're getting into stuff that I was into because I don't give a fuck. Like if he likes Snoopy, doesn't like Snoopy, it's whatever. He'll like something that he likes. He'll like 6-7 instead of Snoopy. The new Snoopy is the brain rot version of 6-7, which does the little thing. Yeah, man, it's just kind of crazy to see him kind of take to some of that same stuff and want to watch more of it and everything and to have that moment of just like, God, like this is more of a realization of just like, God, I guess this really was this weirdly significant part of growing up for me, like that, and the what is it, like the Frosty the Snowman specials and like all the weird TV stuff that would happen around some of these holidays, not just Charlie Brown, but yeah, it's a trip, man. It's in the middle of all the he's playing. They're everyone's playing Tamagotchi Life, and they all have their own islands and their own weird things happening on those islands. And my oldest, who is going to be 7 pretty soon here, hers is the most coherent because she can read, whereas my son thinks it's really funny when it asks, "Hey, what should the name of this character be?" He just enters a bunch of numbers and gibberish, and then it speaks it out loud, and he thinks it's hilarious. So he's way into that. That is my current thing, is trying to impress upon him that, dude, you would enjoy this game so much more if you could read, and we should work on that right now. And he's like, no, I don't want to. I'm like, all right, okay. We'll keep chipping away at that one, I guess. But it's been a lot of Minecraft, and they are getting into creative mode. Like he made a really elaborate house that I was surprised by, because it just feels like, like it was a week ago that he could barely hold a controller, and like he kind of put together a house, and he said, I put a bunch of spider webs all over it so that people would think it was like a zombie house and leave it alone so that no one is ever going to bug me. So that no one's ever going to find my house. I was like, oh yeah, yes. The logic there is sound. I appreciate it. Like your house is made entirely out of glowstone and spider webs, but I can't fault anything. I cannot fault anything you've got going on here, man. And so that stuff's crazy. Is seeing them start to put that sort of stuff together. It's been nice to have like a handful of games, because I guess they sort of existed when I was a kid, but like for all the free to play, there's so much just bullshit out there. It's nice to have some video games that at least like resemble, that offer some form of creativity, right? That he's able to kind of put that together. Meanwhile, my daughter is, making the entire family in Tomodachi Life, but she's not setting any of the relationships correctly to real life. And so there's, like I think I said last week, a scenario is coming where like if relatives are going to end up getting married or something. It's going to lead to a lot of uncomfortable conversations when that finally happens. But yeah, the I don't know. Like I think back to, the video games that I had at my disposal when I was, like roughly that age. I was a little bit older, I guess. But when my parents bought me the Fairchild Channel F as our first video game system, because they were bamboozled into thinking that, like, well, there's educational games on this. It's more than just video games. And so, I got to play math with the world's sketchiest video game controller. And bowling was really the only good game on that thing. I don't know, like bowling was, I got really good at bowling. And then we never got a 2600. I had relatives that had one, and I wanted one, but then we ended up getting the Channel F, and then we ended up getting an Atari 400 because that was a home computer, and computers are inherently more educational than consoles. Everyone knows that. And but even then, like on that computer, like other than doing a lot of typing and typing in programs from magazines or whatever, I was just playing Pooyan. And I guess like Lode Runner, Minecraft is like Lode Runner, I suppose. If we had to, if I'm trying to like think about like what were games of that era that rewarded creativity in some way, like Lode Runner did have a level editor, and so I made a ton of Lode Runner levels. Most of them were garbage and very lazily done, but I don't know. It's like you could at least make your own stuff and save it for later, like, and then in the years following, I'd get a hold of like Pinball Construction Set and make a zillion different pinball machines and whatever. And with that, you could like kind of draw art on it a little bit, and so you could kind of make some stuff that way. But I don't know, like I guess like I don't really have a point here other than like Minecraft is still really cool. Like it's obviously been around for a very long time, and like maybe the updates are not as interesting as they were years ago, but it is still like a really impressive suite of items and tools and interactions and everything. Like, he's not even into any, building contraptions or, like any kind of redstone bullshit. He's just like building cool shit and into it. And my daughter is kind of into the same thing. Like they just both go into creative mode and just kind of like make stuff. And yeah, I don't know, like they're having a mostly good time with that. It really comes down to like they think of objects that they want, and they don't know how to spell them. And so it's a lot of like frustration around like popping open the inventory and going like, I want lime green carpet. I'm like, all right. We'll look for it. I don't even know if that's in there, but we'll find it. It's very specific. It's very specific, but okay. And that's been pretty engaging. I guess like some of this is coming down to like I'm thinking about what the next games for the Jeff Gerstmann Hall of Fame will be. A new one was posted over on Patreon. You can find out more about it over at jeff.zone on how to get early access to that. And that most recent one is a game called Super Mario Brothers Special. And that means that the Phantasy Star Online one from a little while ago is now up on YouTube if you want to see that. I've got a list of games that like I'm not going down the list in order to induct the games. It's more like these are games I should think about next time I have to think about what games are going to be in there. And I know eventually Rocky's Boots is going to make its way into the Hall of Fame. And that was a game that I didn't really get to play until I started interacting with computers at school because it was an Apple II game. And it's a weird follow-up to Adventure, like from the developer of Adventure, but also it's about shapes and colors and like all of the weird contraptions and things you can make. People in chat are talking about Logo. Logo is easy to forget about now. I can't imagine that there is still anyone out there that is introducing computers to kids with Logo and going like, okay, now type ST to show turtle. I'm always trying to show turtle, you know what I'm saying? Now FT90 to make the turtle go forward. Boy, now you got to put the pen down if you want to draw a square. All right, now RT 90 degrees. Yeah, and all the like. No one is. I have to imagine no one is fucking with Logo in 2026, right? I mean, we're probably past that a fair degree. But damn it, they should be teaching Logo in schools still. If you're not familiar with the Logo, it was meant to be like a programming language, like BASIC, but it was Logo and it was lightly graphical because you could always kind of just like plop down a turtle and the turtle was like a little pen on screen, and so you could move the turtle and it would leave a trail behind it and you could use that to kind of draw. And if you could pick up the pen on the turtle and put it back down, and there were different commands that did that. Scratch is the thing now. Yeah, Scratch, right. I have heard of Scratch. My daughter is on something called Prodigy, which is very funny because of what Prodigy used to mean, and so she says like, I was using the computer on Prodigy, and I was like, wait, why were you logged into Prodigy? What did they not have CompuServe? Like, what? But it's like it is some kind of like schoolwork, education platform or something that they get to mess with. If I think if they're good kids, they get to use the computer a little bit here and there. But yeah, it's, I don't know. I keep meaning to look into Prodigy to kind of see what it is and maybe see about getting it here if she wants to mess with it a little bit more. But it's very funny to see all these years later. Bring back Prodigy. I never had a Prodigy account. I had a Genie account. General Electric had their own bulletin board service. Capital G, capital E, Genie. And yeah, we didn't have CompuServe. We didn't have Prodigy. We didn't have any of that shit. I was on Genie, and then we canceled Genie because I got into Quantum Link. And Quantum Link is that shit, man. Quantum Link was AOL before AOL was AOL. It's the same company. It was just for Commodore 64, but it was the same basic idea. A lot of the same concepts carried over, but Q-Link fucking ruled, man. If you were a little kid and you wanted to talk to adults, if you wanted to get good at typing like an adult and acting like a real person at age 11 or 12, I recommend logging into Quantum Link in the late 1980s. But you know, because you'd be in these chat rooms and it was like all adults, and you're like, at least I mean you think it is, but and then they would find out you were 12 and get really weird about it, and sometimes they were very wholesome about it. Sometimes they were very freaked out in like a I'm never gonna talk to you again kind of way, and then sometimes they were maybe a little skeevy, and it was just like, this is none of this is good. None of these are good. But I will say that prepared me for later in life. Getting good at faking being an adult is something that probably serves me pretty well to this day. This is, what do I have here? I have cracked open a sour blue Razilla, which is a C4 ultimate flavor. This is okay. I don't know. You know, kind of a generic blue raspberry. It's a little sour. It's Razilla specifically because down here at the bottom of the can it says Godzilla. And then up here we've got a picture of Godzilla, and he is spewing something out of his mouth, which I can only assume is the sour blue Razilla. And there's 300 milligrams of caffeine, so. Well, what are you going to do, right? Yes, Godzilla. Yes, I'm drinking Godzilla Mind. Let's take a break. We'll come back. We'll talk about some video games, among other things. Right after this. Hitting the road with all your gear. It's kind of a pain because you've got to lug all of these charging cables and figure out like, okay, I need one of these for this. And well, my watch uses this magnetic thing. And I got this old iPad that uses lightning still. So I better bring one of those just in case. No, Ridge has changed the game. For portable charging, they've got a 5-in-1 travel power bank with built-in cables. Lets you charge all of your devices at the same time with just one power bank. No extra cables. It's got MagSafe wireless charging, an Apple Watch charger, lightning, USB-C, all the different ways you are trying to charge things, all in one premium device. That's right. No more juggling adapters and wall outlets at the airport just to get to like 20%. It's got 20 watts of power, so it charges your phone fast. And with 10,000 milliamp hours capacity, you've got up to 3 full phone charges in your pocket. So, you know, you can just MagSafe that thing, just slap, and just leave it on the back of your phone if you want some like permanent kind of, you know, extra little juice, you know, for something like that. And like everything that Ridge makes, it's built to last with free shipping, a 99-day risk-free trial, and a lifetime warranty. This is the last power bank you will ever need. And it looks nice. You know, it's something you can, you know, it doesn't look like no middle of the mall ass power bank. It's nice. It's sleek. It's just a good looking thing in multiple colors: matte olive, base camp orange, matte black, all that stuff. It's got an LED charge status indicator, so you can look at a glance and see battery and charge levels. It even has an integrated kickstand, which is cool. You know, you're for like hands-free viewing for your phone because, you know, sometimes your hands are busy. You can just slap it on there, prop it up, watch whatever it is you're watching. You're good to go, and it's charging up while you're doing so. It's awesome. It's nice to have a nice power bank that you don't have to bring a zillion extra cables with it too. Very, very handy. And hey, if you don't already have a Ridge wallet, you should. They got slim, modern RFID blocking, built to last wallets. It's the last wallet you will ever buy. This power bank, it's one thing to pack, 5 ways to power. You can find Ridge's power bank at Best Buy, or you can get 10% off right now at ridge.com by using the code Jeff at checkout. Just head to ridge.com and use the code Jeff, and you're all set. After you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about it. Hey, support the show. Let them know it was us. We're back. I keep getting emails, you know, despite my best efforts to just stop getting email completely. I get email every single day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. The internet is open for business. I get a lot of emails about video games getting announced or video games getting released or whatever. That's the vast majority of it. and I was talking a little bit about this before the show started. Like, sometimes I think I should just like start writing down all of the genres that show up in these emails, because like so many of them are ridiculous, or it's just, actually, like, some of them are repeated, like you see them more than once, which is, I just got one during that last break with the subject line friend slop driving game. I feel like, it's bad enough that the word friend slop kind of has made the rounds a little bit. I think it's way worse when like the public relations people representing a game, because I don't think this is directly from the publisher or developer. It might just be from, like, so some indie developers will they'll sign a contract with a PR company and say like, hey, can you send out codes for our game, or can you manage the press release process, or whatever. And so it's like they're kind of a contract gig sort of thing. Well, this also says it's a co-op delivery game, which I feel like is a very ambiguous kind of genre-esque term. But I feel like just writing the word friend slop, like, there was a Tumblr. I've talked about this before. There was a Tumblr that hasn't been updated in a long time, but it was called "Why I Deleted Your Promo Email" or whatever, and it was for bands. And so this was someone that was like me, but for music, and they were getting nonstop press releases about, new bands and upcoming releases or whatever, and just like picking out phrases in the press releases that you just like, fuck this, like whatever this band is, they can fuck themselves. You're like, and it was always like, with influences as wide ranging as Led Zeppelin and Public Enemy, and you're just like, fuck you. Just like that eye roll kind of thing that leads to like, I can't read any more of this. Sometimes I think I should start one of those for video games, but it's too. The thing that has always stopped me is it is overly catty, and who has the time? Like, honestly, but like sometimes the okay, so I got that earlier this morning. I got one. What's this say? This is a turn-based rhythm rogue light, which is great. Music-driven beat 'em up. That also showed up today. Let's see. This one doesn't say the genre. It just says it's a, classic PlayStation 1 game coming back. Well, let's see. Let's try to find one more here. Let's see if we can just quickly find one more. All of the, I also get a lot of emails for people wanting to like book podcast guests, and they're always like, I work at an AI company and I want to come on your pod. Like it's not them directly, but it's like, like this person can talk to you about how AI is going to transform the technology landscape in the next 18 months and this and all of that. And they work for of course the person works for an AI firm, so it's like they just want to come on and promote whatever their fucking shitty company is. Short and wholesome incremental journey. That's not really a genre per se. Inspired by the art styles of The Simpsons and Rick and Morty. A bonus on this one. Okay, I have to stop. Because it's like, you see what I mean? Like at some point this is just like shitting on indie games, which like as if indie games don't have a fucking hard enough road. But also, you probably don't need people sending out press releases with a subject line of "When Vampire Survivors meets Rick and Morty." Like, what? No, I'm not touching that. Like, what do you? I'm not reading. I don't want anything to do with it. Another game I'm not sure I want anything to do with is Invincible Versus, which just came out. It's a fighting game. It's a 3-on-3 tag team fighting game. It is a very it really feels like they sat down and said, "Hey, we got a superhero fighting game. What should it play like?" And they said it should play like the Marvel versus Capcom, but bad. I mean, I will preface that by saying I'm not a huge fan of Capcom's versus games, to begin with, but it's I have tried to get into this game, I think 4 or 5 times between like the beta that they ran and now the game is out, and I loaded it up on PlayStation and tried to play some of it, and then loaded it up on PC and ended up playing a couple of matches there, and it's it is a game where you hit down and hard attack, and that launches them into the air, and then you jump up after them and try to do a bunch of attacks, and then you call in your assist character, or you tag to another character and try to keep the combo going and going and going and going. And it's a game with push blocks and like systems and systems and systems on top of each other with that stuff, and it is also a game with a dedicated special button where you hit it neutral to do one special, you push forward and hit it to do another one, you hit back in it to do one of them, and it is simultaneously, like, the inputs are not super difficult, but also on top of that, I think it is I hate the way it looks and plays and feels, and I hate the way that everything moves in it, and like I keep trying to sit down and play it because I'm like, well, it's rare that a new fighting game comes along, I should really give this a shot, and every time I engage with it, I'm just like pushed further and further away. Maybe if I, well, I mean, certainly that's how you do this, right? It's like, if I knew anything about the property it is based on, maybe that is something that would help or something, but I am not even 100% sure what Invincible is. It's a comic. I mean, it's a comic book, right? And did they make a show? Is it an animated show or is it a live action show? I have no animated series. Okay, good to know. Amazon Prime. That's not a real thing. Come on. And it's edgy. Okay, yeah, because like the characters curse, and it just seems fucking stupid. Like I love fucking cursing, man. Like it is one of the hardest things to criticize in a video game, as someone who got fired for saying that a game didn't curse well. It is always a really weird thing to talk about because people like really misconstrue it as like you're just a prude or whatever. Like that is never the case. There is a good way to curse. Like you can. There is an art to it, and it feels like some of the most artless cursing you could find. I feel like Invincible has like checks that box. Of just like, oh, like this seems needless. Like, why are you curse? Okay, sure. And the characters get bloody, and it seems like if you end the fights a certain way, they will fucking, like, the loser will blow up in some sort of blood mess or something. But it just feels like a really bad, like, tag game. It feels like a really kind of crummy post Marvel versus Capcom kind of thing. Like, you'd be better off playing like the MVCs that came after 2, either any of the 20 or 30. No, that's 23. You would be better off with that. But I think the way the game does it is it feels very sloppy to me, I guess. Like, I'm trying to, like, find the right words for it. I've been thinking about this a lot over the past 12 hours. Like, okay, we're going to talk about it on the show today. What the fuck am I going to... And I don't have the right words for it other than, man, I don't fucking like this game at all. And a lot of it is about some of that is about the style of game that it is. Because, again, like, I'm kind of inherently not big on tag games to begin with, and so like I'm trying to like keep that in check and go like, okay, is my problem with this is that it's a tag game, is that it's a Capcom versus game, it is being made in that style? I'm like, no, because like it's it's got a decent auto combo, and like you go through the tutorial and you look at the systems and you're just like, okay, like it's weird, man, because like they try to do a lot of the Capcom shit, or a lot of some of, you know, I guess maybe Arc did some of that as well, like more recently, but it doesn't really feel like that. It is the touch point for them. And then it has this kind of weird NetherRealm-esque layer on top of it where the movement is like, the movement feels awkward a little bit, and also the way they kind of do combo breakers, and the way they kind of build that stuff around like breaking out of a combo, and how much meter that costs you, and everything seems like you know, like it's kind of a hard, like it takes a lot of meter to do that sort of stuff, and I don't know, man, it's a game that on paper, like again, like going through the tutorial, I was like, okay, yeah, this has systems on systems on systems, but all of this makes sense. I see why you would want to use it. And then every time I get into a fight, I'm like, oh man, I don't actually like doing any of this stuff. And like the character movement just feels very stiff. For like how fast things are happening at sometimes, like the actual, like, you know, just jumps and character movement, I think a lot of that stuff feels real bad. And I think more, you know, like I don't mean to say that it's like, you know, a NetherRealm game as like a negative, but I think they're like using the wrong stuff, and they're also like it's not like they're not dedicating themselves to it all the way, and so they're like the movement ends up feeling stiff as a result. Like I think the movement, some people will shit on NetherRealm games with the movement and stuff specifically. I think with the game they're making, and the, you know, the basic ranges of the normals, and like I think there's a lot of stuff there that like all of that makes sense. It at least fits together into a cohesive piece where you go like, okay, yeah. And you might not like that. That's fine. But I think that like the NetherRealm stuff, I feels like intelligently designed, and this feels like they just maybe slapped some stuff together that maybe didn't quite belong. I don't know. I'm curious to see, like, you know, I was on the Discord last night talking about it, and someone was saying that, you know, the widespread reaction seems to be mixed, and most of the people that are defending it are people that are just fans of the show or whatever. And so I don't know, maybe, you know, like maybe it's not going to find an audience or whatever, but it like everything about it feels, again, not knowing the property, it's just like, here's a bunch of generic looking fuckers in capes and like spandex or whatever, and you're just like, here's the most generic looking superhero types I've ever fucking seen, and you're like, one of them looks like an alien man, and you're like, yeah, I bet he does, and then one of them seems shifty and he's got a gun, and you're like, okay, yeah, because this is an edgy one of those. I got it. And maybe if I cared at all about any of the characters, or knew who any of them were, maybe that would change some of that. But I think even getting into it and trying to figure out, like, who the fuck are these people and what do they do? Does this man throw a fireball, or who the Ryu in this? You know what I'm saying? Like there's a lot of just like trying out the characters and just going like, I don't even know what the fuck any of these fucking people do. And which ones I'm drawn to. But the problem is I have to find 3 of them that I apparently like. So I don't know. Yeah, I'm curious to kind of see. I should probably go find some other streams of it and see. I want to hear like someone who likes the game. I want to hear what they say about it. I'm just mostly out of curiosity. But I will say, from where I'm sitting, the game does not seem very good at all. But again, I don't know the property at all, and I'm not really a Marvel versus Capcom. I'm not really into that style of air combo fucked up shit in the first place. So, you know, so I'm clearly not, I don't know. I'd say I'm clearly not the audience for it, but I feel like, you know, at some point, like, it's not like there are a billion fighting games coming out all the time. And so I suppose I am, in a lot of ways, the audience for that, as it is a fighting game, and ostensibly I like those. I'm playing Forza I don't know. Like I'm allowed to say that. They sent out Forza. I'll have some stuff to say about that next week. A little bit closer to the game's release. Forza Horizon 6 is the new one. It's in Japan. So, yeah. They're making another one of those. It's not coming out on PlayStation at first this time around because, you know, their production process or whatever, but it is going to be on PC and Xbox. I'm going to try it on this thing. I have this, what is this? I have this ROG Ally X here that I have installed it to out of curiosity to see how well it runs on a handheld. And so I'll have some stuff to say about it next week, I suppose. Steam controllers went on sale, and they're sold out. Valve has apologized and said, we're working on getting more. And they're working on restocking, but they sold out. I mean, they had regional supply. It looked like it took around 35 or 40 minutes for the U.S. or the North American supply or whatever to sell out. But when that happened, there were people in Europe that were still able to order them. And so, you know, yeah, it seems like that they had some kind of regional supply. Here was my ticket to success. If you want to know how to buy things on Steam, here's what I did. I noticed that the page had gone up at 9:58 instead of 10 a.m. And so I clicked the button that said, sell me one of these. And they said, okay. And that was great. It was awesome. Just clicked the 3 buttons and I typed in the thing for my credit card. And that was that. Zero issues. Zero issues in such a way that, like, I immediately thought, like, oh, if they figure this out, do they find a way to make this work? Oh, geez. And then immediately, like, people were complaining about it being broken. I was like, oh, shit. But yeah, but the button changed from, you know, coming soon to buy now at about 9:58 instead of 10 a.m. And that's when I refreshed the page and went like, oh, fuck. And then bought it. So, yeah, that's pretty cool. They're being scalped, which I think is really shitty. I don't know what I mean, you know, obviously, like, stopping scalpers and everything is a fucking terrible, you know, like it's incredibly difficult. Like, no one has truly solved this problem. But seeing Steam controllers show up on eBay, you know, 2 hours afterwards, you know, like guaranteed pre-order, like I'll send it to you as soon as I get, you know, like all of that shit is really nuts. Like I wasn't really sure what to expect. It sounds like Valve wasn't either, you know, that maybe they were just like, well, it's just a controller. Like, people aren't going to go weird for it. It's just a controller. So we'll sell them and it'll be fine. But people went bananas for them, and they are immediately sold out. It was initially the initial shipping date said 3 to 5 business days. So the people that got their orders in the earliest will theoretically get them this week. Not too long after that, they extended that out to 6 to 10. So people who ordered later in that half hour might get them a little bit later. You know, I'm sure they got to, like, print out labels and put them on things. I don't know. Sorry, no Dota patch this week. We've got to put labels on these boxes. That would be surprising if Valve was really handling it that way, but also there's something about the way Valve is would not shock me all the way. If they're like, yeah, I don't know, it's kind of all hands on deck around here. You know, we're just we're getting these controllers shipped out. It's like, don't you have people for that? Like, no, we're the turns out we're the people. But I bet that's not. I bet they are very much not doing that. But yeah, I don't know. They say they're going to try to get more in stock. Stopping scalpers, yeah, I mean, you could do sorts of stuff around, like, the age of a Steam account, but I don't know. I feel like anyone that wants to scalp and buy shit from Valve probably made a bunch of burner accounts when the Steam Deck first launched, and so they probably have accounts that are years old already. And so if you said this account needs to be 5 years old or 4 years old or whatever before we'll let you buy it, I bet there are a lot of people with burner, and the number of free-to-play games that people are evading bans and all this other stuff. Like I think there's probably a number of like things around account age that would be very difficult. Playtime, like you could base it around that. Like how often do you use your Steam account, or are you playing games, or how many things have you purchased, or whatever. Maybe you could do it around purchases. I would say doing it around playtime probably doesn't fully solve the problem either, because you've got lunatics that are smurfing, and so you've got people with like 3 different fucking Counter-Strike accounts and whatever else. So I like that at some point might not be the best way to do that. So yeah, I don't really know what the solution is to that, because that's a worldwide problem. Nintendo did an okay job with their pre-orders on the Switch 2, but that was also a case where it turns out that they had made a fuckload of them, and so like it was not that difficult for people to get a hold. Yes, that's, you want to stop scalpers. Make enough of your thing. Make too much of your thing, I guess, actually is the right answer there. But yeah, that all happened. I'm curious to see, like that's, I guess like it's a very knowable thing, right? Because Steam is Steam, and that controller is very much like the Steam Deck. And so at some point it just becomes, how usable is a Steam Deck without a touch screen? Because you're getting all of the controls of a Steam Deck except for the touch screen. And the touchscreen comes in handy as a real last resort, kind of like, okay, no, I just need to fucking touch this and make it happen, that you don't get from the rest of the controls. And so that, that does help. But yeah, I don't know. It's a really neat controller, or like the concept, I guess I should say, as someone who doesn't have one of them yet, of my own. I think that they've solved a lot of problems about how to control games with a thing in your hand and not a keyboard or a mouse. I don't think I would ever seriously play a mouse game on that thing, but like you can do it, and it does work, and there are things you can do with the community layouts and all this other stuff that I think works really well, and so a lot of mouse and keyboard games work surprisingly well with it. I just feel like, and maybe it's a time thing. Like, are you going to play a competitive game on it without feeling like you're fighting the controls? And I think some people have reached that point on Steam Deck, but I don't know that I ever will. So, yeah, it is probably something that I will plug into the computer here that I have running Bazite. But I'm also curious about, is this going to be an X input controller? Like, what's the compatibility going to be with? Okay, so, let's take one more break. We'll come back. I'll talk about that some more, because that kind of gets into some of the things that are happening in the news this week. Let's do that. We'll be right back. Spring has sprung. It's true. And you need to start thinking about what you're going to be wearing this spring. Quince has all of the wardrobe staples for spring. Like 100% European linen shorts and shirts from $34. They're lightweight, breathable, and comfortable, but still look put together and clean. It's 100% Pima cotton tees with a softness that has to be felt. They got pants. Oh, do they have pants? Their pants are hitting that same balance, relaxed and comfortable, but still polished enough to wear pretty much anywhere. And it's all priced 50 to 80% less than what you'd find at similar brands. Quince works directly with ethical factories and cuts out the middlemen, so you're getting premium materials without the markup. They got a nice array, a nice wide spread of wearables for you to wear. I've been really enjoying Quince's t-shirts. And they got some nice pants as well that have been very handy because it's been, some days it's just been weird cold, and then some days it's way too hot. So I got to keep it all out. You never know. Am I going to need a nice pair of shorts today? Or am I going to need to actually like bundle up and cover these legs? Quince does it all. Refresh your everyday with luxury you'll actually use. Head to quince.com/JeffG for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. It's now available in Canada too. That's QUINCE.com/JeffG for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/JeffG. So Microsoft rolled out Xbox mode to Windows 11 starting, I believe it was late last week. Maybe it was Insider Builds got it late last week, and it's just rolling out. Anyway, it is sort of a feature flag kind of update, so it's something that you can manually force if you haven't gotten it already, which is what I ended up doing yesterday. But yes, Xbox mode is effectively the same full screen Xbox app experience that they rolled out onto the ROG Ally X when that right around the time that launched. And it is designed to be a full screen Windows experience. So it launches the Xbox app. You can use that with a controller. You can launch games from there. The games will launch full screen. It is, I'll tell you, very strange in a multi-monitor environment because it tries to make everything on all three monitors run full screen at all times, and that's ridiculous. Anyway, this is kind of the next step in consoleizing the PC for use on whatever the next Xbox hardware is, right? And there's been a lot of reporting around that they are apparently trying to like fix the performance issues of Windows 11, and they are using SteamOS performance as a benchmark for like where they need to get to, because they know that SteamOS and you know, like even with the ROG, there are cases where a BASIDE install is running games better than Windows is, and they shouldn't stand for that. They should not. They should fix that. Will they? Will they is a different. But that's ridiculous that is something that they are having to deal with. So this Xbox mode rolls out, and you can go into your Windows settings and turn it on, and basically it means whenever you launch the Xbox app, it will launch full screen. There's an Xbox mode button on the app, and when you click that, it goes full screen and whatever. And so I've been playing some video games, as I mentioned earlier, that require that are launching out of the Xbox app, and among other things, I've got a handful of things installed in the Xbox app. We were talking about the Steam controller a minute ago, so here's a really crazy fucking thing that Microsoft will have to figure out and address, and it's going to be something that they will have to decide. Like so many of the decisions that they are making, they're going to have to decide whether they are going to force the home team advantage, or whether they're going to be open to competing products and services and devices. Xbox mode on the Xbox app works with a wide range of controllers because Windows is built in such a way that it can recognize a variety of controllers. And so, if you are the type of pimped out thug that likes to use a PlayStation controller on the PC, as I do, the Xbox app works fine. You can move around in the app. You can launch games from it. You can go to all the different menus. The PlayStation controller works incredibly fine for that purpose. However, many of the games that are in the Xbox store do not support PlayStation controllers. And so it is this insane process of, okay, oh, cool, this works. Okay, I'm going to launch this game. And then the game launches and the controller you're holding no longer works. And so I had to put it down. I have an X input supported controller hooked up. It's wireless. I can just undock it from the charger and bring it over here, and I can use that on the fly. But that's insane. And so that's something that they're going to have to decide. Either they will remove PlayStation controller support from the Xbox app and just say up front, like, yeah, I don't know, man, get a fucking compatible controller. Or they need to start patching games or creating their own version of Steam input or some kind of thing in order to bridge that gap, because it's fucking crazy. And again, this is something that is just now rolling out, the Xbox app and whatever, but like that's a game specific thing, right? And that's something that is like, if you're a normal human being, like, I understand why it's that way. But if you're like a regular, normal human being who has somehow decided to use a PlayStation controller on your PC, which I don't think is that far-fetched these days, maybe less so if Sony's not going to put their single-player games out on PC anymore, because we'll have fewer games that have full DualSense support, which is neat on PC anyway. You'll have an issue where people go like, what the fuck? This is unacceptable in a mainstream setting. As much as it's easy to look at and understand and go like, well, yeah, I mean, the games are built on Xbox tech, and so of course they're only going to support this controller standard, and yeah, they don't support the PlayStation controller. The fuck thing is, like, you know, like the Xbox app does not have any real input to tell you, like Steam does, about, yes, this will work with your current controller, yes or no. And so there's just a lot of work that needs to be done across so many fronts when it comes to figuring that out. You know, when they make an Xbox console and it's still a PC, I would not be weirded out if that thing just didn't work with PlayStation controllers, because they're selling it as Microsoft hardware, and it's like, I think that's like a reasonable assumption. Like, but for a PC-ass PC, to support it in one spot and not the other, I think is just it's a very funny problem. It's a very funny problem for them to currently have. And I wonder what, if anything, they will do about it, because right now the experience there is, it's confusing, because there's no error message. There's no nothing that says like, hey, we see you trying to move a controller, but you can't use that one. You need to go get an Xbox controller or whatever. Like, it works in the front end app, and then you push the X button to launch the game, and then that is the last controller input that anything sees. So, you know, that's they need to, whether game input needs to be updated, which I think is what their current controller standard is these days, or what, they need to do a better job on that front before they put this in front of millions of people, which I guess they are putting it in front of millions of people technically, because it is rolling out in Windows 11 now. But that's, you know, weird, let's say. Let's get into the news. Speaking of, you know, things on Microsoft devices, they've started rolling out some updates for that ROG Xbox Ally X. We talked about this a little while ago, but they have started to offer auto super resolution, auto SR, which is something that I believe we last talked about around GDC. And this is their DLSS style solution that is meant to be built at an OS level and not necessarily a GPU specific level. A vendor specific level, I guess I should say. And the way they are billing it is 1440p like detail alongside smooth frame rates on larger screens. It's something you can kind of toggle on and off in the game bar. Everyone's favorite, another wonderful part of Windows 11, the game bar. Ugh. And yeah, so that's like available in like a preview form on the Ally X, and I have not seen it yet, so I don't know if I'm not running I'm not running an insider build of Windows on the Ally X. Maybe I'll try that out and see what happens. But yes, that is something that they are getting ready to roll out, and that seems like a big help, or a potentially a potentially big help for some of these smaller handheld devices and finding ways to kind of squeeze more juice out of them. You know, that's definitely a thing. They're also trying to make improvements to the docked experience. I think we talked about that as well, but like, you know, there's stuff about docking one of these handhelds to a TV that is not optimal. We need optimal docking. It's 2026, you know? Like, I'm not here to fuck around. I'm a grown-ass man. If we're going to do some docking, we're going to do it right. And so they're making some updates there, which is, you know, I suppose always welcome. I had a thought in my head because I mean, I'm not going to do it because I just don't care. I have too many devices and I don't need to squeeze the juice out of every single one of them, but I do have like some older GPUs around here that are not being used. And I thought for a minute, like, I should buy a fucking, like, a GPU dock and plug the ROG into that and then hook that up to a TV. Like, think of all the power I could get. It would be so much more powerful than the ROG Ally X is by default. Oh my God. The power I would wield. And then it's just like, dude, you know what? So I can see it on this TV instead of the monitor that's over here. Like, I already have a PC that's, you know, and so I was just like, I don't need to do this. This is not. I'm interested in the external GPU thing because it's so fucking crazy. It is what it was like. It's the cool thing that I think people thought the Switch 1 was going to be, if not the Switch 2. Was like, oh, is there going to be power in the dock or not? Is there going to be like actual computing things in the dock or no? And the answer was no. But what if there was? I think that would be actually like a weirdly interesting upgrade if Nintendo did that. Like, it's not Nintendo's MO at all, so who cares? But like, imagine, what if they just sold a Pro dock and updated the firmware on the Switch 2 to support it? And so if you went and bought a Pro dock and then docked, like, games looked reasonable at 4K instead of like kind of smudgy and you're like, this doesn't look right. That'd be neat. Be a lot of money. A lot of money spending to play Switch 2 games slightly better on a television. So, you know, like not actually a good idea from a product and like user offering. So yes, call it the Switch U, because you are at the center of the experience and you are the one who decided to make this look better. And so you bought the expensive dock. Yeah, not actually like a good idea, but that would be cool. I don't know. It'd be neat if they did that. If nothing else, you'd go like, oh, it's cool that they leveraged that, whatever that is. Call of Duty is finally done on PlayStation 4 and presumably Xbox One, though I think they did not say that specifically. This is coming from Twitter on a result as a result of some, you know, like there's a zillion leaker types out there and some of them have better track records than others, and it's hard to tell one from the other these days because, you know, they all have dumb names. But it's like someone basically got out there and said like, oh, they're play testing Call of Duty on the PlayStation 4 right now. And people were like, what? We're going to get one more, you know, like there was some minor upheaval about the idea of them continuing to support the PS4 all these years in, especially, you know, for a game that probably needs a real technical overhaul yet again. In a rare kind of rebuke of that, the official Call of Duty account got on the internet and said, not sure where this one started, but it's not true. The next Call of Duty is not being developed for PS4. So there you have it. If you ever wanted to see, if you wanted to see what a Call of Duty game would look like if it was being developed specifically for current consoles, just in time for those current consoles to be replaced by even more current consoles, this is your year. We still don't have any real formal that is, I think, the only real detail, other than when they had to apologize for this year's game by saying next year's game is not going to be a Black Ops. Like, we're not going to do back-to-back Black Opses anymore. We're going to spread them out. I think that's the only thing they said is when they were apologizing. And so now they're saying it's not being developed for PS4. So I think that means it's a PlayStation 6 game, you guys. I think that's... the weird thing here is we were just talking about this last week with, the supposed idea that Call of Duty would have to come to the Switch at some point. Like it seemed like a world in which they're already generating assets for old consoles would probably help in some regard when it comes to putting Call of Duty on the Switch 2. But the Switch 2 is more powerful than that generation of consoles in some ways, but not every way. I guess it's not a straight one-to-one thing either way. But I don't know. It's hard to know whatever will happen with Call of Duty on Switch 2. Because it's just a strange, I don't know. It's such a strange concept. But it's May, so presumably we'll hear more about Call of Duty. I wonder, do you think they announced Call of Duty inside of the Xbox showcase next month as part of the Summer Games Fest thing? Like, this would be the time for it. They have it has been their like hour-long, info dump in years past. So if there was a place to announce it, this seems like it would be the place to do it. I mean, I guess you could always just announce it separately and put its own thing, put your own thing together later in the year. It's Call of Duty. But just to confirm the name of it and the, like some of the basics around it. Like, hey, yes, it's Modern Warfare 4 or, whatever they end up calling it. But I feel like the Modern Warfare 4 talk has been constant for most of this calendar year. And so if it's not that, then that's probably what they were calling it internally. And then they end up calling it something else at the last minute. Like, it's Modern Warfare Reward. Refought edition. Yes, Modern War 4. Sure. Re-ghosted. Re-soaped. Now available at an all-new price. No? All right. Well, we'll have to wait and see what the deal is there. Why do people play video games on consoles? Why do people buy one console over another? What are they looking for? It's there's a lot of like conventional wisdom that I feel like we throw around a lot. Circana has issued some actual data. This comes via Matt Piscatella of Circana. And Circana is they're the group that has been doing this for a long. This was they were NPD at one point, right? So they're the company that has been tracking video game sales data, among other things, for a very long time. But they had a consumer survey earlier this year, kind of talking about like. Basically, like asking a lot of people a lot of different questions, and they've been tracking this stuff over time. And so this year over Q1 of last year, they have some numbers changes here. But the question was asked, why do you play games on a console? 41%, the leading answer is, there are games I want to play that are exclusive to a console. That is down 8 points from where it was last year. So fewer people are saying that than used to, but that is still in the lead by a few points. Number 2 at 38% is friends or family also play on console. Right there with it is it's easier to play together with friends and family. And then also right there with it is like 38%, 37%, 36%. At 36% is prefer to play games in a more casual setting like a living room. And then at 24%, at number 5 on the list is have more options to buy physical games for consoles. And so that's, you know, obviously like they asked a ton of survey questions and, you know, I'm sure that there's more that kind of contextualize that a little bit further even. But it does kind of make for an interesting kind of an interesting little data point in the middle of all of this discussion around, are games going to go exclusive again? Is Xbox going to take their games off of PlayStation and Switch and whatever else? I would be curious to know. This is maybe. There are games I want to play that are exclusive to a console is an interesting number one answer for a handful of reasons, but also, you know, there are a lot of situations where people don't necessarily understand that a game isn't exclusive because of co-marketing campaign. There was some, it was, I talked about it before, but it was like around the launch of GTA, because of the marketing campaign that PlayStation had in place with GTA, they had convinced, and this isn't necessarily, they were not necessarily setting out to deceive players, but it is, when you do a co-marketing deal, it is to associate your platform with the game. But it sounds like they did quite well at convincing players, some percentage of players, that GTA was only available on PlayStation platforms by virtue of how widespread that marketing campaign was, and how many different places it appeared, and how many times the PlayStation logo was shown in conjunction with GTA. Like, they did a very good job in that case of driving home the connection between PlayStation and Grand Theft Auto. And so when you tell me you've surveyed people and asked them why do they play games on a console, and that is the number one answer, my immediate reaction is that makes a lot of sense. That's probably true, but also I think there are a lot of players that don't fucking know what an exclusive video game is, and they don't necessarily pay close enough attention. So we have here also reasons to play games on a console. Friends and family also play on console. Remember, this is a survey from this year. The vast majority of major multiplayer games at this point are cross-platform, cross-play. And so, like, it makes sense that people would answer that way because they don't know that, you know, or they think it's way. And the other one, the answer right there with it is easier to play together with friends and family, which, like, yeah, if you're all on the same console and you're all on the same console-based friends list, then you're all right there, right? You don't have to do the thing like, you know, let's say you're playing Marathon with people across multiple platforms. Then it's not just like, what's your Xbox name or what's your PlayStation name? It's like, what's your Bungie name? And tell me the stupid 4 numbers after it, because I need to add you as a Bungie friend. And what the fuck is a Bungie friend or an Activision friend or a Call of Duty friend or, you know, like there's, you know, the crossplay. The process of adding your friends when crossplay is involved is not as smooth as popping open your Xbox friends list and hitting the send invite button. It just isn't, you know, it's not hard to do all that stuff. But the thing you have to remember is that we're dealing with a lot of people that don't like friction in any form. And they're just like, I just want to turn on this console. I want to smoke drugs and play video games. And I do not have time to ask you for your Bungie name, good sir. And so they just don't have time for that shit. And I think that, you know, we do probably see a kind of, you know, some number of console purchases or just like people that would never even consider a PC. I think a big part of that is just like they envision friction that isn't insurmountable, but is, you know, some of that friction is very real. And they don't want to fucking deal with it. And I get it. I don't want to fucking deal with it. I'm equipped to deal with all of it, and I have dealt with most of it. It still sucks. Sucks all the fucking time. And now no one uses the built-in voice chat in anything anymore because they all want to hop on Discord and do this. And I have played games with people who didn't even want to do that. I have played games with people where I had my headphones on And then I had AirPods on under that because they wanted to do it as a phone call. And I was on the phone with them for voice chat, and then I still needed to hear the game, so I had to put the headphones over the AirPods. What the fuck, man? You know, people use what they know. And if they don't, you know, like people that don't have time, they don't have a fucking Discord account. They don't fucking, they're just like, what? I just want to play some fucking video games. You're on PC? Shit. Okay. I guess we can't use voice. You know, it's like, well, the game technically, like, no, we got to do that. Like, People create their own friction where there's actually none. And also people envision friction in some of these scenarios where I don't think there's quite as much as people think. And I think that probably, I think that probably explains at least some of these results and why they are the way they are. I don't want to take anything away from the data. Like, the data is the data. I'm not saying I don't believe the data. I'm saying that, like, in my experience, when you ask consumers about these types of problems, most of them have no fucking idea what you're talking about. You know? Or they have a perception of, like I said with GTA, where like something's exclusive and it isn't, and they don't follow this stuff closely enough to fucking care. Right. And that's why, you know, like when I harp on a lot of the fucking Windows stuff that Microsoft is or isn't doing, like that's the stuff I'm thinking about, right? Is you've got to battle against this specific type of inertia. Like Xbox has a massive uphill battle on just developing this software in such a way that it is easy and appealing for normal people to use. And if it's not, you're going to scare them all away immediately. And that is such a hard problem because, again, we're talking about fucking Windows 11, man. Woo! A lot of work. They've got a lot of work ahead of them. They know that. I mean, that's, you know, like they did an earnings call where they said, hey, gaming money is not where we want it to be. And then Asha Sharma, who's the new head of Xbox, I guess, just got on Twitter and started saying like, yeah, we got a lot of work to do. We're digging in, which of course, yeah. Of course they are. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, and they're the task. I think the task they are taking on, like the concept they are trying to build, I think is very interesting, and I think it's very difficult. And I think a lot of that difficulty is just like, I think it's difficult for Microsoft specifically, and I'm very curious to see how they do it. But yeah, a lot of people are not ready to dig into, like, some people are saying like, I don't have any issues with Windows 11. It's like, yeah, I don't really either. But when you see them try to make it easier for people that are not going to have a mouse and keyboard in front of them, and you start to experience things like the full screen experience on the ROG Xbox Ally X, and you start to look at all of the other things they are trying to do in ways to kind of streamline that version of the experience, that is when you say, oh man, Windows 11 is not built for this. Like, Windows 11 is not even performing as, like, the games are not running as well as Steam OS. Like, that's like, they have a lot of work to do. In short version, they continue to have a lot of work to do. Rob Dyer, who's the CEO of Capcom USA, was talking about Pragmata at an event here, and Steven Totillo was in attendance. And it sounds like that they just, like, focus tested the shit out of that game. Like, you know, Pragmata was in development forever. But according to Video Games Chronicle's recap of this, you know, like, they did a lot of focus testing. They took a lot of data from, you know, they ran surveys in the West and all of this other stuff. The quote here from Rob Dyer is, they took feedback, and after 6 years of development, it was worth the effort. We're to a point now where we've got another IP that Capcom can continue to go down, like basically implying that like Pragmata has been a success at a level that they could make more of them in the future, which I think, you know, is maybe not, you know, maybe not a huge surprise here, but yes, Capcom also kind of issued a bit of a, you know, they beat their chest a little bit here. As a result, these initiatives generated significant momentum, enabling Pragmata to achieve worldwide sales of over 1 million units in just 2 days, despite being a completely new IP, marking a strong start for the title. I don't think I want them to make another Pragmata game without saying specifically, without talking specifically about the end of Pragmata. It's fun. It's a really good game. I think it's a really interesting story with like cool characters. You know, characters over story, really. Like the story itself is maybe not amazing, but like the characters, the twists and turns of those characters, I think is incredibly well done. The moment to moment dialogue is done nicely. And I don't think I want another one, or like, if they do more, it needs to be dramatically different. Otherwise, they're going to run into the same problem that the Horizon franchise ran into, where they make another one and you go like, yep, yeah, you sure did. You sure made another one of those that people didn't necessarily need, but it's not a bad game, but I think there's a story you could certainly tell that takes place after the end of Pragmata, but it's a pretty different one than the first game, with a very different setting and a lot of other stuff there. So hearing them out there talking about like, we did it, we created an IP, you know, and this is, you know, like, he's Rob Dyer again, he's the COO of Capcom USA. That doesn't necessarily mean he's in a position to, you know, green light new projects and all of this other stuff. But I look at Pragmata and think like, that's a really good one-off thing that they made. It's really cool. It has a really great idea, and they need to not make another one. Like, this thing loses a lot of what makes it special if you turn around and try to follow up on it. And, you know, companies never do that. Making games is expensive. If you can make another one and leverage assets, storytelling engine, know-how, like whatever you can leverage to make that sequel for less money than the first one cost, that's a tale as old as time. You know? Like, how long was Ratchet and Clank, you know, making like good meaningful updates? I mean, most games, right? I mean, you know, they were putting a Tony Hawk game out every year. You know, obviously they're not like completely rebuilding that game from the ground up every single year. Call of Duty is in need of something more closely resembling a full rebuild. But, you know, imagine how much more money Call of Duty would cost if they had to reinvent the wheel every single year, you know? So naturally, of course, this industry is going to gravitate towards sequels and, you know, those types of revamps that are, you're like, okay, yeah, they made another one of these, and in this one I can do a manual. In this one, Ratchet's got these guns, and the HUD is red instead of blue. You know, like you know, there's shit like that. Is nothing new. Nothing new, to the point I remember being bummed out by the second Ratchet and Clank game. It's still a really good game, but I remember getting that second game and being like, oh man, this is cool. I mean, it's cool that there's more of this, but like, I'm never going to feel the same way the first game made me feel if you just change up the weapons and levels and ship it out again. Like, you know, it's kind of like, but that's just how it goes, right? I mean, that's how sequels work. That's why the video game industry is so reliant on them, is because it helps them save a ton of time and money. And that's not anything new. But Pragmata 2 would be, I think, a tough hill to climb. I don't know. Maybe do a side story. I don't know. I'm not really sure what would be the right way. Well, whatever. I don't want to talk to you about the end of Pragmata because some of you presumably will still play that game. So I'm not going to get into the particulars of how that game ends. But I think they should not make a direct sequel to that game. So Sony finally issued a statement about their DRM thing. This has been going on for a couple of weeks here, where people noticed that digital purchases as of sometime in March were being saddled with a 30-day timer, and immediately people started taking apart their PlayStations and ripping the battery out to see if the games would still launch, and discovering that they didn't, and going like, they did it, and trying to figure out what was going on. A theory kind of formed in the wake of this, but Sony did eventually kind of issue a statement around this, to let you know that 30-day timer is designed as a one-time check, and that it is not something that lasts permanently. This kind of follows on from last week's theory that this was put in place to as a 14-day kind of stopgap, to prevent people from buying games and then issuing refunds and then still being able to play the games offline because the licensing was built in such a way that they could do so. And so, it seems like this is kind of the way that this went. And Sony didn't issue a statement for a long time, probably because they had to this is probably one of those things that, when you go to like the PR folks on the US side of PlayStation, who are great people, and you say, hey, what the fuck is up with this? It's not like they're like going, oh, well, it's definitely, they have to go, we'll check. I don't, we'll get an answer for you. And so I'm sure that they have spent way too much time over the last couple of weeks talking to people in Japan, like kind of trying to get the answer to this and go like, what is going on here? Is this a bug? Is this a thing? What is it? And trying to find the right statement to issue or whatever. But it sounds like this is not a big deal. After that initial check has passed, the digital license kind of reverts to what it traditionally has been. And so this whole 30-day timer that people have been freaking about was seemingly all for nothing. As Bryn says, you can't just say we haven't been briefed on this. But yeah, like the thing is, it was not a change that I'm sure it was not a change that anyone thought anyone needed to be briefed about, right? It's like a relatively minor change in the grand scheme for them that people noticed and freaked out about, and then they had to figure out like, okay, what's the actual answer here? What's going on? And yeah. So yeah, probably something that they did to secure people, again, from either buying and getting refunds, or something that people are using to get licenses that they can rip out and use on hacked PlayStations, or just like some form of that, basically. And it's entirely possible that this is not even like a new change. It sounds like something that people noticed around the time of the more recent, like a more recent firmware update. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a brand new change. It just means that people noticed it. I don't know. It's a mess. Everyone's got too much time on their hands. We've got to pick these things apart and get really mad about it. Like, whatever. That's a thing that, if that change was real, then, I think some of that anger is justified, right? Like it's but we do live in a world, and I try not to be guilty of this, but I'm sure that there have definitely been some scenarios where I have been, because I think a lot of it is human nature in these oh so modern times. I think you have a lot of people who jump to the worst possible conclusion immediately. No one is given any sort of benefit of the doubt No one is given any sort of like, this is something I noticed a lot. Like, so back at the old website when we were posting podcasts and stuff, the idea was that people who were paying for premium memberships would get an ad-free version of the show, and people who were not would get a version that had ads. Now, those are two MP3s on a desktop with very similar names, and it is entirely possible to drag one into the wrong bucket and accidentally post the show with ads to the premium feed and all of that. The reaction, and like, we're just people, you know, like, I don't know. I guess we lost that, you know, at some point we started being part of fucking CBS, and so like at some point you're not just people. But you like to think you have built up some sort of goodwill with the audience. But the number of people who saw that one and just immediately said, so I guess you're just putting ads in the premium show now, huh? I guess you just changed that and that's the way things are now, huh? Well, I'm going to can't. And you're like, no, thanks for the bug report. We'll fix it. Like, what? This is very aggressive. You are coming very aggressive about this thing. Like, I don't like, what the fuck? Like, it was just like, it was very like, all right, shit. Okay. Like, I don't know. Fucking shit happens, man. We fixed it. It was fucked up for like 5 minutes. Like, get a fucking hold of yourself. Like, just a lot of kind of aggressiveness on those sorts of things. That's just like, I don't. Okay. But at some point, yeah, I don't know. At some point that changed. But I guess I would say, like, all of these systems are built by people and all of them are very easy to make mistakes in. And so, you know, I think even at the largest companies, this shit sometimes happens. And maybe, you know, like, just try to take it down a couple of notches and just go like, I hope that is not something that they're doing full time, because that would be a problem. It seems crazy that they're doing this. Let's see if they are in fact doing this. And with Sony, they were like, no, we are not in fact doing this. And you're like, okay. All right. I don't know. It's tough, man. It's tough because there are things that are worth getting mad about, but I think people also get extremely overly aggressive when it comes to some of these things. Like, they are ready to get fucking mega pissed about any kind of service change, even if it's not, even again, if it's a mistake. And what are you going to do? Oh, what we're going to do is we're going to check out emails. Podcast@guard.bike is the email address. Yeah. Snuffy says, someone had a rage bait Steam controller video up in minutes yesterday. I guess, man. Yeah, sure. I guess ultimately that's the problem. There was, I didn't pull it for the news, but I guess, you know, we're kind of talking about it anyway. Tim Kaine of Fallout has a YouTube channel where he posts stuff talking about his views on things. And he ran a video, you know, I don't know, the quote here, like IGN pulled this quote. It says, now we're in the 2020s and many gamers don't even look to influencers for reviews. They look to influencers to be told how to think about the games. So people don't form opinions from the online video. They're handed an opinion from the online channel they're watching. And basically saying, like, you know, that there are people who are just like consuming video game coverage so that they can inherit an opinion and then parrot that online. To which I would say, where have you been for the last 20 years, Mr. Kaine? Like, yes, there's a segment of the audience that has done that with video game reviews since the fucking 90s, man. Like, I don't like it. It's not how I build a content operation. But as someone who has reviewed games for a long time, yeah, man, like, yes, there's some portion of the audience out there that is almost looking, it's almost like they are looking for you to convince them to not buy a game so that they can save the money, so that they can just go, I hate that game anyway. Yes, and Pauline, yes, exactly. Just the people out there, just absorbing. I mean, Pitchfork is a huge, I think, Pitchfork created a lot of that style of content consumption as well around their reviews of albums years ago, and you had people just immediately going, well, that album sucks because XYZ, and it's just like points from the Pitchfork review, and you're like, that's fine, I don't like, that's not interesting to me to have this conversation with you anymore. But like, I don't know, like I think reviews and that style of coverage and whatever, I think has a real value, but I think it's up to the audience to use it the way that they see fit, and you can't really control how that stuff gets used afterwards as much as you want to try. But like, hey, why do you think they call them influencers? Like, yeah, right? It's why the term has always seemed so disgusting. It's not my job to influence people. Like it is ultimately, it's my job to kind of say, here's what I think about this thing, and I hope you get some value from that. You may agree with it, you might not, but either way, I want you to come away from the coverage more equipped to make a decision about what game you're going to buy or not buy, or like I want you to come away from it, ideally entertained as well, but like, ultimately it's to inform you about things, man. It is to make sure that you are better equipped in the fight against all of these companies who want to market everything to you as if it is the best thing ever made. And influencers at times get enlisted into that fight, right? I mean, that's very, there are plenty of sponsored videos out there. There are people taking sponsorships from video games all the time, and that's a very common thing. But like, you need to know what that is. You need to understand what that content is and who it's meant to serve, and it's not you. So I don't like, ultimately all you can do as a reviewer or a critic or, whatever, however we want to split the difference on that one, is speak your piece and back up your arguments. And if people look at those arguments and agree with them, that's sensible, because my arguments are very good. But if you come away with it going like, well, Saros is probably a pretty good example of this, because the reviews have been, mixed is maybe a strong word. I'd say they are largely positive, but maybe some people are significantly more over the moon about that game than others. Whereas I am not over the moon at all, I would say. But that's a case of like, I'm not necessarily out. Like, my job is not to stop you from buying Saros. Like, that's never what this line of work is. My job is not to like convince you that you should never play fuck this game. It's not like it's, Yoshi's Island or something truly dreadful, right? It's to talk to you about how I feel about it and say, hey, I think that this game doesn't hit. I think that this game just doesn't, this game doesn't work for me, and here's exactly why. And I think it, like, there are going to be some of you out there that definitely are feeling the same way about this game, but maybe you will just go, fuck it, I love this game. Like, that's fine too. That's fine. But I do think, like, we also live in a very different world than the world of 20 years ago, right? Like when it's very easy for me to sit here and talk about this in the context of reviews and the quality of a game and all of that. But I think what we're seeing more and more of, or I don't know, it's not that we're seeing more and more of it, it's that it's kind of reared its ugly head again. Is I think that as a result of what happened with Twitter, and Twitter becoming just a fucking garbage dump of people trying to farm engagement with the like most incendiary takes ever, because that's how you can make money on Twitter. I think the way that that is filtered into everything, that type of engagement style coverage, the absolute rage, like rage in video game coverage used to mean like the angry video game nerd said that this game sucks, a piss wizard, or, you know, like whatever fun cursing he does. It used to be Angry Joe was out there saying some stuff, and you just look at it and go like, that's unreasonable. His arguments are unreasonable. But that was that. But that was the end of it. And now you've got people that are like, we're going to make AI art to try to tell you that Saros is about lesbians and cucking, and like just like making up like huge inferences that you could only make if you either have not played the game or you are very deliberately trying to mislead people into getting mad about a thing that's not worth getting mad about. And that's kind of where we're at, right? Is there just seems to be this like fucking undercurrent of scumbags that are out there trying to get real mad, trying to get you real mad about a video game. There was some fucking picture going around. I think it's like a recent post, but it was someone posted a picture of Anita Sarkeesian and said like, hard to believe, you know, I can't believe that this woman ruined video games forever. You're like, what? How? Name one way that she had an impact on major commercial video games, other than to maybe get some people to have the conversation about like, oh, I don't know, yeah, representation of video games, I guess that sort of matters. Anyway, we're a publicly traded company and we're going to make more games starring white dudes. Like, that's interesting. It's an interesting meeting. Anyway, we're over here. Like, games don't take that stuff as seriously as people think. When all the fucking sweet babies, like people were latching onto that and trying to say like, those people are consultants. They come in and they say things like, oh, you know, we think that this would be important and, you know, that this stuff matters. And companies take some of that advice and then also don't take a lot of it. But like, that's not a narrative that gets these people like angry YouTube views or whatever. And so like, they have to like find these boogeymen every 6 months to try to claim that they're taking your video games from you. Like, no, they're fucking not, dude. Video games are getting more expensive to make. And video games are getting, you know, like the, you know, they're not making as many big ticket video games anymore because they just don't, a lot of times they don't sell as well, and the projects are very expensive, and so recouping their costs is very pricey, and it's not 2002 anymore, you know? Like, shit fucking changed. Trying to blame that on people who were just trying to say like, hey man, it'd be cool if, you know, maybe we had a wider array of available video games to speak to the wide-ranging audience of people that play them now. It's really all those people ever said in those consultancies and some of the other things that they're trying to do. But no, they're ruining video. It's fucking bonkers, man. And these people are scumbags. So I don't know. Like there's also like scumbags out there that are trying to like prey upon you as the general audience for game coverage to try to turn you into something you're not and try to get you angry about something that's not worth getting angry about and whatever, man. It's really, it's sad to see in a lot of ways, because I think, you know, a lot of time around video game coverage and a lot of other stuff like that gets wasted. You know, because you've got these dipshits out there just like starting fake drama and like fake fights about things that just don't even, it's just really, it's fucking bananas, man. I don't know. And so like, you know, so that is, I think, where a lot of this has gotten to. It's not just I listened to an influencer say a game was bad and now I think a game is bad, which is kind of what Tim Kaine is saying here in some ways. Like he's kind of focused on that specific stuff, but like a lot of that stuff is kind of, again, has blown up into a bunch of stupid bullshit. But you know, he also goes on to say like that he's seen people talk about designing games with influencers in mind, or like, you know, hey, a developer might try to think about a specific influence. Like, you know, there's people out there. I'm sure that people out there, you know, making small games have probably been like, well, you know, what is there? And I think small teams sometimes get desperate to try to figure out what can make their game poke through, what can make their game palatable to a wider audience, what can make the game palatable to a streamer so that that streamer streams it. We saw it when like Shroud was an investor in that like teleporter Counter-Strike game or something. Like that in some ways is like the nastiest version of that, right? Where you've got like a streamer literally on board. And then he doesn't even play the fucking game that much. Like that's how good that game came out, I guess. Or like, hey, if we, you know, like, hey, we know that there's a guy who's got jokes about, you know, this type of grappling hook. And so what if we put that in the, you know, if we put this in the game, will Northern Lion go bananas for it? It's the worst way to design a game. It's one of the saddest ways to design a game, I think, to try to appeal specifically to an individual person, because then they might stream it. You know, because in a lot of cases with these larger streamers, those people probably don't have the marketing budget to just pay the streamer to play the game as a sponsored stream sort of deal, right? And so if they can try to organically make a game that will speak to a certain streamer, maybe that audience will buy it. But I don't think that pipeline exists the same way that it used to. You know? Like, I feel like a lot of that pipeline is just broken. The like, hey, we're designing this, you know, we're going to try to target this type of player, and maybe this guy will stream it because we think, you know, that this person might be into it. Or, I think the only influence I've had in that specific way is I think I have heard from someone who said we put better color blindness options into this game because I heard you complaining about that shit. And that's something that, like, that doesn't get me to stream the game more or what. Not that I'm some fucking kingmaker or whatever, but you know, hey, if that aspect of accessibility gets better because I have complained about bad implementations of you know, of accessibility and color blindness options and stuff, then great. If I can use my influence in that specific way, I'll take that, I guess. Anyway, I don't know. This has gotten kind of long-winded and kind of sweeping, I suppose. I don't think Tim Kaine is wrong here per se, but to say it now in 2026 when audiences have been reacting to video game coverage in that specific way for decades, I think is a little. You're kind of late to the party on that one, because I've seen that reaction to my work for a very long time, in the worst ways, right? It's part of why Metacritic sucks, it's part of why, like, Metacritic doesn't suck. It's the same way that the way people use Metacritic sucks. You know, the way people try to solve arguments online by complaining about Metacritic scores or trying to weaponize reviews in like message board arguments or social media stuff, and you know, more social media stuff these days, obviously, than, you know, fucking message boards. Are there even any big message boards for video games left? Like, probably not, right? Like, the NeoGAF guy turned out to be a fucking creep, and then that splintered apart, and now there's kind of nothing, right? Like, oh, that guy, ugh. So I don't know. But that's how there was a lot of that, right? And there still is quite a lot of that. More than there should be, but I think the people that are trying to like whip people into some kind of cultural frenzy around the most benign fucking thing, like, is that's the That is the sick part about all this. Anyway, let's get some emails. Podcast@guard.bike is the email address. Send in an email and I will take a look at it. Sean wrote in, we were talking about, like the prices on some of these Lenovo handhelds have gone to an insane price points. $1,800 or something for some of these. About the Legion. Anyway, Sean writes in here, says, there was an email last week about the Lenovo Legion prices spiking. I know for a fact that Lenovo is in a bit of a dire situation. My employer placed an order with Lenovo in early January for 30 laptops. The order is yet to go into production because Lenovo doesn't have RAM. They don't have any DDR5 RAM at all. And their stock of NVMEs as of late March was nearly depleted. Additionally, the cost of the order has been increased by 5% twice. As of April 1st, Lenovo could not assure us that we would get the order fulfilled this calendar year. We were told the things were so bad that they were looking to revise the design of the devices that were designed for NVMe-only storage so they could start shipping with 2.5-inch storage options in the near future. Yeah. Yep. It's bad out there. And that's, I'm curious to see how much more expensive iPhones will be this year. I assume that's going to have to go up because they're like, Apple just had their earnings call and they were like, yeah, it sucks. It's going to probably be a problem for a while and we're going to have to think about that. And then they killed production or seemingly canceled a lower end version of the Mac Mini in favor of the more expensive version that comes with upgraded specs because, then they can make more money on it or whatever. But even that one is out of stock for months. The MacBook Neo has done quite well for them, and they are quite sold out on that. And it's going to take them quite some time to kind of get back in stock for some of that stuff. But, we're going to see a lot of product lines shifting and moving around in that way, I think, for at least the rest of this year, if not, into the far-flung future. And so you do, again, these are all kind of points on the way to a next generation console, right? How much more expensive does an iPhone get? Who raises is Nintendo going to raise their price? Who's going to do it here? Who's going to do it here? When do they do it? What other devices with RAM are getting harder and harder to come by? These are all going to be signs on the road to a fucking PlayStation 6. Monkey Stick writes in about abuse, specifically the 1996 PC game. From your friends at crack.com. Just revisited this game tonight via DOS emulation, and I remember finishing it back in the day. I'm in my mid-50s now. Is this game good, or have I just become bad at video games? It's fucking impossible. Yeah. Abuse. So if you're not familiar with Abuse is a side-scrolling shooter where you use the mouse to move your aiming reticle around. And so you have mouse aim in a side-scrolling game. And so you use WASD to move around, W jumps because it's a side-scroller. And the developers have roots in, in shooters and stuff. It's it wasn't American McGee. It was who was Dave Taylor? Dave Taylor? I believe it was Dave Taylor. But some of it was id alumni started crack.com and Dave Thomas, not Dave Thomas. Dave Taylor. Anyway, it's a cool fucking game with a ton of cool atmosphere and the for mid 90s, the idea of a side-scrolling game that had analog aiming via the mouse was really fucking mind-blowing. And there were things about it. It was a very difficult game because you had these alien creatures leaping at you all the time, and that was the aiming interface was something that was kind of difficult to get used to, because you had not seen a lot of that. We would see more of that, you know, like a game like Soldat. Soldat does exactly the same thing, but in a multiplayer kind of setting. But it is that, like, okay, you're doing all of your movement with a keyboard, but then you're aiming with the mouse, and so you get this like free range of analog aiming that you weren't used to at that point, because no one had dual analog anything on anything. And so Abuse was a really fucking cool game. It was a shareware game that came out, you know, kind of the first episode free kind of deal. And so when that thing dropped, it was pretty mind-blowing for its time. The full game gets really difficult. Yeah, Abuse is not an easy game. It never was. Abuse never was an easy game. And so every time I go back to Abuse and play some of it, I am reminded of just like, oh man, this is pretty fucking rough. But I got pretty far in it last time I played it. I don't know. That thing has difficulty settings. I think you should just turn it down. If you're having trouble with Abuse, just turn down the difficulty and keep playing it. That is my advice to you, Monkey Stick. Kyle in Austin writes in and asks, have you ever thought about buying the Capcom CPS Changer home console? As far as I understand, this is basically the Capcom version of the Neo Geo, but wildly obscure, expensive, and a much more limited number of games. Were you aware of this when it was released in the 90s? So the CPS Changer was designed, like, it actually looks sort of like the CPS2 hardware. If you're not familiar, so Super Street Fighter 2, the Darkstalkers games, like a lot of that era of Capcom output in arcades is issued on a platform called CPS2. And the CPS2 games came in, it was basically kind of a cartridge format in arcades. Not as easy as the Neo Geo was, because it wasn't like a tiny cartridge you literally plugged in. It was like you had a base board that had a bunch of fucking CPUs and guts in it, and then you had you had your B board and your A board, and you would dock them together to basically put the software of the game into the hardware of the CPS2, and all that was wired up to a cabinet. And so you could pull the board out, put a different board on it, and change Street Fighter to Darkstalkers pretty easily. It's crazy. It's awesome. These big plastic shells, they look cool as shit. And they all have batteries in them that if the batteries die, the games kill themselves. They have like literal like suicide problems, where if the battery dies, like it's a protection. It's a protection thing to stop people from bootlegging the games. Anyway. And so CPS2 arcade hardware was based around that. The CPS Changer is a similar concept turned into a home console. It is sort of like what we consider a super gun, where it is sort of a way to hook arcade boards up to a regular television, but they sold specific boards for it. And so you would buy the CPS Changer, and it looked like a big CPS2 style of setup, and you would dock the big games onto it, and you could play like Street Fighter Alpha. But it was technically CPS 1, not CPS 2. And so there is a case of, I believe Alpha 1 is the game, where they backported a CPS 2 game to CPS 1 specifically to sell it on that thing. But like they had a bunch of CPS 1 hardware left when they moved to CPS 2, when they decided to do this. I had heard of it. I don't own a CPS Changer. It's ridiculous. If you wanted to do something like that, you would just get a super gun and do it the right way, right? I don't know how many games exist for the CPS Changer, like software side. Like I don't know how many. Like it was a really good way to play the arcade version of Street Fighter at home for a very limited amount of time. And then people just got way into super guns, and it was way cheaper to just buy a fucking hyper fighting board than it was to source a changer and the controllers for it and all this other shit. And but it's like something that I think there was only like 4 or 5 games. Like not a lot of games came out of the changer format. And I want to say that I could be fucking dreaming this, but I want to say that they initially viewed this as something you would rent. Like that the changer wasn't always something, like it was pricey. And you certainly could buy them, but I believe that they I believe they intended for you to rent these things. In Japan even, but I could be mistaken about that. It's a neat concept, and I think I first heard about it when CPS changer versions of games started coming into MAME and being emulated there. And I think that was the first time I ever heard about a CPS changer. But I've seen one. I believe I may have even used one at one point, but I don't think I do not own one. I don't need to own one. Trevor from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, writes in and says, I don't care for controller rumble. I can see why most would like this feature, but it's never been my cup of tea. I recently played Resident Evil 4 Remake with a DualSense, having never touched one before, and I thought I broke the trigger when I ran out of ammo and fired the gun dry. It's pretty cool they can make it feel that way, but I immediately turned it off. Is there any beloved feature of game systems, controllers, or games that you've never jived with? Yeah, Rumble, I think, is a very personal thing, and I really like that the DualSense controller can do what it does. I just wish it didn't sound like it was breaking into a million pieces inside when it was doing it. Like, sometimes when you have a vibrating, like if you're firing a machine gun and the trigger goes tat, 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 like the sound it is making, like the sound coming out of the controller is too much. It is kind of fucking ridiculous. So I wish that the rumble was significantly quieter in PS5 controllers. That's probably my desire there, but I really like the idea of rumble, but I think for a long time it was something that was it's not key to any experiences. The triggers and the haptic feedback in the PS5 triggers, I think that is something you can design a game around. That's enough of a feature that you can design a game around. I guess I should say you could certainly design features around rumble. Nintendo did it in Zelda. Right? You get the whatever stone, and then you know, when you're near treasure, the rumble pack vibrates. That was that updated version of Zelda. But I wish that there was way more nuance to it, and I don't think that I think that what the PlayStation 5 controller does is really cool and has a bunch of neat ideas that, you know, like Saros is a great example, and Returnal as well, of like they basically turned the analog triggers on the PS5 controller into some GameCube-ass controllers with just the haptics, because you pull it halfway and it hard stops, and you pull past that, you click past that to get to a different firing mode. And I think that's really fucking neat. And the way it feels is like really natural. There are some rumble trigger interactions on the PlayStation that feel like, again, that the controller is about to fucking break into pieces. And so sometimes I really don't like that stuff. Like shooting games, I think when you are shooting and the thing feels like it is rumbling in your hand, I think the noise it makes, all of that, like it's just too much. I think speakers on controllers is a really interesting gimmick that I turn off every single chance I get now. That was something that when they did it on the Wii and you could hold it up to your hand, the side of your head, like it was a tiny little phone, like we were side talking on a Wii remote. I'm like, oh, this is clever. Look at this. But I think that that's super annoying. I mean, half the time I'm wearing fucking headphones these days. And so, like, if there's audio coming out of the speaker, I'm never going to hear it because I'm wearing headphones now. So it's just kind of a useless feature. That is, I think that's just like design-wise, I don't think that anyone has ever... I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't say ever. I'm struggling to think of a time when the controller speaker was anything more than a neat little gimmick. Um, and like if there was a time when it was actually valuable, I would say, I guess this isn't a controller speaker thing, but if they were to reissue Manhunt, they would almost certainly use the speaker for when Starkweather is talking to you. But Manhunt had support for the SOCOM headset. And so if you wanted to just have his voice coming into your earpiece, like like the earpiece you were theoretically wearing in the game, you could plug in the USB headset and have that in your ear. And that was fucking cool. That might have just been Manhunt 2. I don't remember. But yeah, controller speakers are stupid. I don't think gyros in controllers have ever been really useful. I don't think, there's some people that appreciate gyro aiming in games. But I feel like all of the 6-axis stuff and all of the gimmicky little, like, I'm going to turn this controller sideways and use it like a paint can. Like, yeah, sure, dude. I guess. I don't think any of that stuff is especially good or that is especially necessary. I think the touchpad on the current PlayStation controller is utterly pointless and is barely ever used. And is never used as a high definition touchpad. It's more just like, look at big button, push big button. You want to get to option screen? Push big button. And I think that sucks. But yeah, those are kind of like my things. Yeah, is there any other beloved features of game systems and controllers and stuff that those are probably my big ones when it comes to features. I think that like share buttons and stuff like that are not great. Or like rather, I never like if some people are into them, I know, but like I never do that shit. I am never looking to take a screenshot with the controller, or like if I'm in a mode where I need to be taking screenshots of a game, I'm just gonna fucking roll. I'm just gonna record the whole thing. I'm just gonna capture all the footage and then take screenshots later. I do not want to take screenshots in the middle of playing a fucking game. I don't want to, and that goes for like any kind of like on the fly video recording, the NVIDIA, shadow play, like we're going to capture this and you can touch this button and capture your last 60 seconds. Like, no, I'm never going to do that. Leave me alone. Stop it. Leave me alone. I don't want any part of that stuff. But yeah, no, I see why people don't like Rumble. I feel like Rumble has more often than not been, like I said, like pretty superfluous. It's not like a necessary thing. It's nice to have at best. I think as the fidelity of that stuff increases, that was something I thought maybe the Switch would be better at. Like when they were talking all about their high def Rumble, like they came out to our office and we played 1-2 Switch. And got to feel the magic of HD Rumble, and came away from it going like, oh, the tech on this is really neat. Like that actually feels like there's a tiny little ball hiding inside my controller as I roll it around. Isn't that cool? And like no other fucking video game ever did shit with it. Like, and on top of that, when the Joy-Cons rumble, again, like the thing I hate about Rumble most is how fucking loud it can be. Like the haptic triggers on the PS5 are loud to the point where it feels like the controller is breaking. The high-pitched buzzing of a Switch controller, I think, is like, it sounds bad. It sounds cheap. I think the rumble on the Wii remotes, or on the Switch Joy-Cons, like there is some fidelity there for sure, but the way it sounds and sometimes feels, I think, sounds incredibly cheap. Yeah. You should buy a PlayStation 3. They hate Rumble over there. Right up until that lawsuit. Like Rumble, what was it? The quote was like, Rumble is such a last generation concept. Like, yeah, I bet, man. Ben in Cincinnati asks the question, did older games have more style because realism wasn't an option? What I mean is, back in the PS2 and older days, realism was not even remotely possible, so almost every game looked distinctly different from each other. Metal Gear Solid didn't look like Gran Turismo, which looked different from Resident Evil 4 or Shadow of the Colossus. Each of those dev teams had their own approach and solution to what was important to prioritize, and the process made more games feel visually distinct. Today, with AAA chasing realism for a lot of their games, it feels like that has removed a layer of style that used to happen. A lot of AAA games all look at a baseline very similar now, especially Unreal Engine games, because of that chase for realism can flatten the distinct look. Am I crazy for thinking this way? Well, Ben in Cincinnati, I think you're right. I think reality is a weak goal. It always has been. It's a shitty, boring thing to chase. In a medium where you can literally create anything, and you're completely unbound by reality. The amount of hours that people have spent trying to make a realistic looking New York, or like, here's a war-torn desert town that has been blown apart, and here's a tank. Yeah, man, that shit's fucking boring as shit. It has its place. You know, there are certainly games and stories to tell that, that it would not make sense to have everything be completely abstract and strange and whatever. But yeah, I think that a lot of that chase is boring. And I think the fidelity has led to a lot of different expectations. Like the Uncanny Valley moves in a variety of ways, right? Like, there's a lot of PS2 games that, like, when characters spoke, their lips didn't move in any way, shape, or form. You know, or they didn't move in a realistic fashion or whatever. Nowadays, you can see, like, there's no blur there anymore. You go back to, go back to like Metal Gear Solid as an example. Like, go look at Solid Snake's fucking face and the fidelity of said face. I think that they made the right choices there to make that game look fucking great for its day and realistic for its day. But if that had been running at a much higher resolution, they wouldn't have been able to get away with it, right? And so nowadays, when everything's running, or if everything theoretically needs to be able to run at 4K, at least after processing and upscaling or whatever, there's a clarity that you get in modern games that requires you to then address that stuff. Like, if you're making a game with a dude in it, he probably needs to move his lips when he speaks, or else that's going to look crazy. And so I think a lot of the expectations as to what games need to do changes as a result of a lot of that stuff. But yeah, I mean, I'm only partially joking when I talk about it, but there is that idea of just like how, every generation Triple H's hair looked better. Every generation, the tires on all the cars got a little bit more round. They will never get Triple H's hair right. I'm convinced that video games will never actually do hair right. It's not to say that hair doesn't look better, but still sometimes hair looks real weird. But the tires are round. You can't make them any more round than they already are. And so we've hit a certain type of reality there that I think is absolutely fine. And you kind of come at it from the other end of just like, all right, now what? You're going to put out a new generation of consoles. The tires are already round. What are you selling me? And so you get these diminishing returns like, well, what we're selling you is the lighting is done in a more realistic fashion, and we can scale. Maybe that, if you want, you can run this at 60 frames a second and turn some of that down, or you could do 30 and the lighting will look better. Yeah, like we end up in those sorts of scenarios that are always like, I don't know, kind of a crapshoot. And so you almost need you need developers coming in with, you know, the current power that we have. You know, it's something that at least, you know, as much as I think that Crimson Desert is not a does not feel good to play. They spent a lot of time making some real fucking weird shit in that game, and even the stuff that is supposed to look real because it's people looks crazy in an insane way. Like that game just looks wrong in ways that are sometimes kind of appealing. In some ways, it just feels like, you know, you need more developers coming in and doing wilder shit. That's part of why I think Marathon is so fucking awesome, you know? Like even more so than Destiny. I think Destiny they did a really good job of establishing like a visual design and like a visual language and whatever you want to call it, an art direction that felt real while still being kind of fucking wild. I think like Marathon feels like a step further in that direction. But there is still some form of reality you are modeling there. You've got, okay, this swamp, the water in this, when you step a foot in this puddle, it needs to behave the way it's supposed to. And when you butt up against this door and you shoot this glass, it needs to break like glass does. But they get away from some of the issues about like faces of characters when half the characters you meet are fucking robots or worms or both. Like they do a lot of fucking really cool shit. You also run into a thing where I think like a lot of people have no fucking taste. I'm not going to lump myself into this and say that I've got the impeccable taste or whatever, but I think I'll put it to you like this. You can run a merchandise business and you can spend a lot of time working with artists to come up with really fun, inventive t-shirts, real silly shit, real cool looking stuff. Sometimes people just want a black t-shirt with the logo of the fucking website on it. Even if the logo for that website is ugly by comparison to all of the other stuff you may be selling. Sometimes people just want a black fucking t-shirt with the thing on it. And I think the same could be said for video games. I think you've got a lot of people that, out there that, you know, and this is not a one-to-one thing, but I think when you get into video game design and art direction and all this other stuff, I think you have a lot of people that just can't think outside of the box. And so the more abstract and weird you get, you lose a lot of people because they can understand like that guy's got an M16 and he is running fucking hella fast. And he's got a military man haircut, and he is saying, I'm fucking Oscar fucking Mike, and that is my shit. And all this other stuff is, you know, all this other stuff makes me think and or feel things, and that's not why I'm here. You know, I think you got a lot of people that are very uncurious, that engage in anything. This is not specific to video games. This is fucking everything, right? And so, yeah, I think that, you know, you have some people that just reject cool looking shit because they're just not up for it anymore. So, yeah, I don't know. And maybe it wasn't always, I guess, maybe that's a problem as a result of how big video games are now, is the mainstream audience is really a lot more mainstream than it was 30 years ago. Just wonder in a world, you know, like, and it's you think about it in terms of driving games and like, oh, they're not going to make another Burnout because people want real cars. That always seemed to me like the craziest shit. Like, let me get this straight. You only want to play a game if it's got some fucking Fords in it? Like, what do you, like, you don't, What about the cars in Burnout were not particularly outlandish. Like, they were not honestly one-to-one recreations of a fucking, like, a Camaro or whatever. But, like, they were realistic-looking cars that still looked cool in their own realistic car kind of way. I think, like, fake cars, to me, are way more interesting. Especially fake cars created with, like, a design, like, an aesthetic in mind. Like, hey, what if these were real cars? And so the conventional wisdom of like, well, we're only going to make Need for Speed because it's got licensed cars, and so that comes with a bunch of restrictions around damage and this and that, and so we're not making another Burnout because of this and that. Like, that always seemed fucking crazy to me. In a world where we saw numerous Ridge Racer games with some awesome fucking looking vehicles, in a world where Wipeout was once king, and those things don't even have fucking wheels on them, man. Like, has the video game audience, has the mainstream video game audience just become so, again, like, whether it's uncurious or just so fucking boring that, like, we can't have nice things anymore? You know, like, look at some of the backlash to Marathon's art style, I think, is driven by, you know, some of the bullshit we were talking about earlier, and has nothing to do with the game itself. But I do think you have people that are just, again, inherently fucking uncurious, and they're just like, I want the fucking spacesuits, and I want them to look gray. It's like, all right, well, we have a video game for you. It's called Starfield. Enjoy. Fuck, man. And as, you know, as the game prices, as game development gets higher and higher in cost, you end up making these video games where you have to think about that, right? You eventually reach a certain budget where you're like, well, players want realistic looking video games, and so we can't do this outlandish, like, this shit is too far, like, we need to rein it back in and make it look like more grounded, or make it look like more lit like this, and whatever. And yeah, No Free Will in the chat says visual literacy is also a thing, and the U.S. educational system basically canceled all art classes in the mid 90s to early 2000s. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, like, I took an art class in junior high, and I don't remember what we even did in that class. I remember one time I tried to snort a pixie stick, and that went poorly. But I don't remember what we did in the art class other than draw some shit. But like, but I have never taken any sort of art history, any sort of knowledge of art that I have come by has been a result of, you know, doing my own reading on the subject. Like, after Rez came out, and seeing Tetsuya Mizuguchi talk about Kandinsky and synesthesia, I found myself going down that rabbit hole of like reading a lot about Kandinsky and looking at a lot of Kandinsky's work and all of that, and eventually coming to appreciate it on some level. But like, but I don't think a lot of people are, and I don't know that I necessarily am. Like I said, I was not necessarily given the formal tools to fucking talk to you about art. I like cool art. That's it. Anyway, realism sucks. I'm surrounded by realism. It's pointless. It's utterly fucked, man. Are you kidding? Shit is too real, if anything else. And so I don't know. Like, I sometimes want something a little more abstract. But like, I don't know. I like a lot of games where you just fucking shoot dudes too. Like, it's that stuff's fine too, in its own way. But I think to absolutely exclude certain types of games just based on, you know, them looking a certain way or whatever, I think is sometimes hard. But you know, like, you could argue that I did that with South of Midnight. but that's a case where I think because of the way that game runs and looks and plays, like it's stuff that ends up kind of weighing on the gameplay in a way that I don't much care for. And so there's certainly been art styles that I've seen that just don't work for me for one reason or another. And so that's why I say, like, you can't necessarily, like, I'm not trying to say like I've got the good taste and everyone else has bad taste. It's more that just like, sometimes people have different tastes and sometimes people just don't know what they're looking at because they have not been equipped to handle it. And you could argue the educational system plays a role there, but I think, again, like we talk about media literacy in general and just kind of like people's disposition when it comes to consuming any type of media. I think you have a lot of people out there in the kind of, and I think a lot of them that are just generally uncurious. And I think those are the people that like would go read an article on a website that says like the secret ending of fucking Guardians of the Galaxy 2 explained. Because you're just like, I didn't get it. Well, I don't even know what happened. Or I think I know what happened, but I want this article to tell me what happened so I don't have to fucking think about it. None of that's good. In the end, none of that's especially a good thing, I think. But it's a sad state of affairs. But I used to, like there was a part of me that always wanted more when it comes to movies. There was always that, the thing I like. The movie trick that I like is the ending of Animal House, the ending of National Lampoon's Animal House, where they tell you what happened to every character. They go through a little sequence at the end and they freeze frame on everybody and be like, this guy became a congressman. And you're like, ha ha, that fucking idiot. And so they give you just enough of like, here's what happens after the movie to go like, yeah. But you always want to know, oh, what did that character do 6 weeks after this, or what are they, like, I don't know. I used to very much be that type of person with movies. Instead of just like going, okay, that's that thing. Now I'm a lot more just like, that's that thing. It doesn't have to explain anything more than this. There's a part of me that would like to see more of what those characters get into or whatever, but like that's fine. Please don't make a sequel. And then they go and they make a sequel. And then they're like, okay. All right. Fine. Let's see. Anders writes in and says, Anders from Norway writes in and says, if you had to get a tattoo of Calvin pissing on something, what would it be? The classic bumper sticker of Calvin pissing on the Ford logo, or perhaps the Chevy logo. And then there's the other version of that, which is Calvin sitting down and praying. And it's like there's a cross there. So instead of like Calvin pissing on the Ford logo or whatever, it's like Calvin praying to a big shining cross. So I don't know, like what you like. Yeah, Mario. Yes, Calvin pissing on the words Mario Party. Yes, the 311 logo. That's a pretty good one too. Calvin pissing on Calvin pissing was the kind of go-to gag for me and a few friends when we were 15 or 16. I think it would be funny to get Calvin pissing on Calvin pissing, but now that but also because of the way that went, where now you've got Calvin praying and you've got Calvin down on his knees. What if you had Calvin pissing on Calvin praying? I think you could do that. I think you could do that and have a really good time with it. It makes you think, as they say. I would not get a tattoo of, well, I don't know, maybe a tattoo you could cover up, a tattoo you could wear a shirt or whatever, whereas if it's on the back of your car, you're kind of living with it in a more direct way. Calvin pissing on the word commercialism. Calvin pissing on the word racism. Calvin pissing. This Calvin pisses on fascists. I would write, this Calvin pisses on fascists on my guitar. Just really torture and confuse this out as many different ways as possible. Pissing on Yoshi. Yeah, I mean, Yoshi would love that. Little piss freak. Not Yoshi. Everyone knows it. Let's see here. We've got a kind of we have a sort of a backup of emails here because, you know, just there's been a lot of news and a lot of you know, a lot of longer shows here, guests and whatnot. So let's see here. Brandon writes in, with the talk of the next Xbox targeting high specs and being crazy expensive, could a solution be to continue their versioning strategy and embrace the PC side of their PC console hybrid? Why couldn't they build a base box and then offer an S, a standard, a pro version at retail? Perhaps even offer the upgrade components as standalone purchases where customers can upgrade their box on their own. Unsure of how this would work and if it would be sunk by a Microsoft proprietary solution with expensive sole source parts, but it seems more viable in the market today and easier for developers to accept at the same time. So making the box modular, I think, is a non-starter, because if you wanted to make a console easy to upgrade, we're talking about a series of cartridges or whatever that you're removing and plugging in, and that starts to get expensive because those are all weird proprietary solutions. And so I think like the idea of getting one of these things and expecting to be able to upgrade it in a meaningful way is probably foolish. But also I do think you're right that they would eventually certainly offer multiple different versions of the device. Because if we're thinking about this, like, okay, let's say they launch, you know, Project Helix and it works out for them. It's a viable platform that they want to continue forward. Like, okay, you probably don't make an Xbox 2, a Helix 2, whatever you want to stick to the code name. And so you start to wonder then, if this device is the way that they go, is this the end of generations for them? Because anytime there's a viable upgrade and anytime a third party wants to make one of these, they'll just make one, right? If they eventually get to a point where OEMs are making Helix compatible devices, which I assume they would do, why wouldn't you? If it's just a PC with maybe kind of one additional part or whatever, or will off-the-shelf PCs just be able to do this? Like, you know, I think I'm a little confused about that aspect of this shift. But yeah, sure. You would eventually make a more powerful one. You would eventually try to make one that was lower priced. You would eventually, you know, I think of course you would be embracing by definition a multi-device strategy. That's not something they get into on day one, because on day one they just need people to fucking be aware that they exist and want one. You know, and they don't want to overly confuse it by having a bunch of OEMs in the marketplace with just like, I don't know, Asus has one and fucking these guys got one and everyone's making an Xbox now. These are all Xboxes. Like, they want to control the messaging and the experience in the early days before it gets a bunch of weird bloated stuff. It's like, well, Asus wanted to install the, yeah, I don't know. Now every Xbox comes with fucking Armory Crate installed on it because we hate you. Like, good. Great. Thanks. But of course, I think, you know, the natural conclusion of this shift is one in favor of like a more fluid set of devices. And they offer their kind of locked down, like, hey, this is an Xbox from your friends at Xbox, and we made the Xbox, and this is the baseline spec, and then maybe they make a pro version or whatever. Like, sure. But they want to have a limited number of those. And they probably want to exert some sort of control over those OEMs and try to stop them from getting too weird with it too, because it just confuses things. And if this gets established and is a success, I think then they kind of back away from some of that and go like, yeah, man, make whatever. We'll make our stuff over here, and if fucking Gold Star wants to make a fucking Xbox, awesome. Let him. But right now, I don't think any of those get cheap. You know, like that's the thing. You know, your Brandon is approaching this from the idea of what if they sold an S and a Pro version and a standard, and like I think they need a baseline spec that is powerful and easy and just kind of fire and forget. And so I wonder if they will offer multiple specs like at the initial rollout, or if they will just try to focus and just coalesce around one box and go, this is the fucking Xbox. You can get it with a bigger hard drive, I guess, you know, or something minor like that. Instead of trying to confuse the issues and you know, make it so that developers have to, you know, like worry about certification on multiple devices. That's another one. Like, how does certification change? Does certification change when you're shipping games on this thing because it's or does it just become the same as it is to get on the Xbox store on PC? I don't know how or if they certify those games. But I wonder if it ends up becoming something like that or what. Goomba writes in and asks, how come European developers are the ones making Shinobi, Streets of Rage, Castlevania, and Ninja Gaiden? I don't mind or anything. I'm just not sure why they're the ones picking up every abandoned Japanese property. It's a good question. Like, you know, the with Windjammers, it was because that's where Windjammers was popular. And so when they came to make Windjammers 2, it's because they were all Windjammer freaks, because Windjammers is apparently huge in France. You're like, what? But I, you know, it's kind of, it's not necessarily spoken in the question, but I wonder if you're asking why aren't Japanese developers making this? Because these are all, you know, all the games you mentioned are Japanese in origin. I think specifically with Sega, Sega has grown their European presence quite a bit. I think they're running a lot of the company out of Europe these days, or at least the Sega of America is maybe not as big as it used to be because a lot of the calls are being made out of Europe, because Sega of Europe kind of became ascendant at some point, if I remember right. I believe that's the case. And so that's probably a contributing factor to why stuff like Shinobi and Streets of Rage are coming from that part of the world. I think there's I don't know, man. There's something about Europeans, man. Like, they have a real love and care for some of these old franchises that sometimes it doesn't seem like that would be the case. But like, yeah, there's definitely like a love for the old shit out of Europe. And so you see a lot of developers, like, you know, think about the developers you've seen on stage in tears because they won an award, or in tears because they're you know, they debuting their game at a Nintendo press conference. And you know, like we're seeing a lot of developers in that part of the world that have that kind of like interest in that specific legacy. And so I imagine it's a case of like, they grew up with this stuff, they really care about it, and they want to make it, you know, even if in some cases they experienced some of that first on an Amiga or something strange like that. They end up having a real love for that. And yeah, I actually don't know the answer. I don't know the answer, but you know, probably some of it is like American studios would be potentially more expensive in development in some cases. Depends on where in the world a game is being made, right? So there's sort of some difference there along those lines, but yeah, I think, you know, it probably just, you know, I don't know, like small developers in Europe might have healthcare that American developers don't, and so they're available to stay small and take on some of these projects. You know, like the environment there is maybe a little bit more conducive for small teams to make games due to factors completely external to the game making process. They have some sort of social safety net. They have they can make these kind of smaller projects, and that I'm sure that is probably a factor in some of this. Let's see. Alex from Framingham writes in and says, what do you think about the rise of a Balatro-inspired roguelike subgenre? I've been playing Racoin, a new coin pusher roguelite, and while I think it's plenty of fun, I can't shake the feeling about this and many other games that are copying Balatro's homework to a significant extent without enough differentiation. Slot Machine Balatro, Scrabble Balatro, Picross Balatro. I know this just happened with Vampire Survivors, and I don't mean to disrespect the good work of talented developers, but something about this wave of Balatro-likes feels spiritually hollow. Am I overthinking it? I am kind of with you, and for me it comes down to just like the fonts in some cases, where you just look at some of the numbers and go like, oh yeah, you're making one of those. I see. That is my problem with it, is when you see the games that have like visual, like distinctive looks that you go like, okay, yeah, you're really trying to signal to people that you have made a Balatro-esque thing here, right down to the font you're using for your numbers. I've played a handful of games over the past 6 months or year or whatever that that definitely are trying to pull that. And I don't like it. The games are fine, but I wish that they would not. It's one thing to chase a trend. It's another thing to try to like look visually adjacent to a thing. And I think that is maybe my problem with, like, again, specifically the font work and some of that other stuff. But this is a tale as old as time. Pac-Man had this problem. Galaxian had this problem in the 70s. So, Balatro, if nothing else, is in extremely good company. And it's just a sign and a testament to just how successful and impressive Balatro really was. And, to an extent, Vampire Survivors, as you mentioned. But spiritually hollow is perhaps the right way to... I think some of... Like, Racoin did nothing for me, man. Like, I just didn't even want to get to the point where it started doing more than just being, like, it's just like, here's this kind of slow coin pusher. Like, it's a coin pusher. I don't care how many mechanics you hang on a coin pusher. I don't want to. I do not want to, good sir. I like Nubby's Number Factory. That's not necessarily a Balatro-like, but it is, like these games where they start to give you stakes, where it's like, oh, if by the end of the round you don't have this, you're going to run into trouble. And, Clover Pit was one of those for me. And I think Clover Pit does a decent job of like carving out its own visual identity, but I don't like Clover Pit. But also, I'll tell you, I don't, I think Balatro is really clever, but I don't necessarily enjoy playing it. I think Balatro is really well made, and I think it's fucking cool as hell that it got as big as it did, and all of that. But like, I had my time with it. I did not wring everything there was to get out of it. I played enough of it to go like, yep, okay, I'm good. I don't necessarily want to do any more of this. And then, with Clover Pit, I hit that wall significantly faster. I have Forbidden Solitaire installed, which I don't know if it is exactly one of those. But it is at least like sort of adjacent to that. I've also been playing a little bit of Titanium Court. We didn't really talk about that at the top of the show because I don't know that I don't think I've played enough to have anything especially interesting to say about it, other than I think I really like the writing, and I'm not sure that I enjoy actually playing it. Like their flip on the match 3 stuff is not really doing it for me all that much, but I like the look of it, and I really enjoy the writing, and so that's kind of keeping me on the hook so far. Oh, so Forbidden Solitaire is more of like a Regency Solitaire kind of. Okay, all right, cool, cool. Titanium Court is neat. You should at least look at it. I think the writing and the use, like the interface, I think is really well done. And I kind of want to spend more time with it, but there's just something about the gameplay part of that is not necessarily doing it for me. For one reason or another. I'll probably play some more of it just so I can interrogate that a little bit more. But yeah. I believe I have been good about flagging questions that I have read so that we don't read them twice, but also I have read these emails a handful of times over the weeks. So this one's about a month old, but you know, we had some long shows where we didn't get to emails, so I don't think we've taken this one. Nicholas wrote in to say, I'm the CEO at the Bad Idea Factory. We heard your praise about Jaws Enhanced, and we'd like to corner the market on NES games made better by guys who are playing through every NES game on YouTube. What underloved NES game would you most like to fix up to play well with more modern features? That Jaws Enhanced Edition, you may have seen it. It came out. We talked about that a while ago, but they added, like, they extended that game out a lot with some interesting new mechanics. It's a fascinating thing they made. The answer to me is the same as it has been since it came up when we ranked it. It is Die Hard. Die Hard for the NES is a game that has a lot of interesting ideas in a vaguely open world, a vaguely open zone kind of, you know, because you're in a building, it's not a world. But I think enhancing the mechanics and the responsive, the different types of responses that the enemies can have and what have you inside of the NES version of Die Hard, I think would go a long way. I think there's a lot of cool shit you could do to make that game more of like a stealth action game. I think there's a lot of really neat shit you could do with what's there. That is my answer. And yeah, I mean, yeah, if, you know, add a bunch of more power. Like if you could add good weapons to Dino Wars Destruction of Spongulus House. Add weapons to that game that aren't garbage. That would be like the stupid fist power up and stuff like that. Like if that game had better weapons in it, woof. It would raise its profile at least 5 to 10 places. It would certainly be better than Solstice, the Quest for the Staff of Deimos. That much I can say definitively. Grant writes in, this is maybe a weird kind of end around to this, to where we're at, but he asks, did AAA video games need E3 and proper games journalism? Was that kind of gatekeeping and big events what was propping up the AAA industry, the official feeling that set those games above the rest in people's minds? Whereas now all these games just get lost in the shuffle. Yeah, the state of play presentations still happen, but they're not this big event the whole industry gets behind. I often don't even realize they're on and end up missing them completely. I feel like there's a real lack of centralized community now. There's no curation anymore, and with so much choice, I end up playing nothing. Back in the day, I knew the big games, what was getting all the hype, and I could play them along with the zeitgeist. Now all that feels lost. I think this is partly why everyone says this generation hasn't even started. It's a free-for-all now. It's like when an evil regime is taken down and suddenly the country is full of militias tearing everything apart while everyone flees. Kind of like what gaming is right now. The status quo was taken out and now it feels like we have nothing. So that's an interesting question, and I don't know that I've ever really thought about it that way. I am inclined to say no. AAA gaming did not necessarily need E3 or, as you put it, proper games journalism to exist. The idea was that AAA games were big enough that they could market to the mainstream. You know, Halo, like you had games that were at times felt review proof because they were so large. Like everyone, like reviewers could have said, oh, Halo 3 is fucking terrible. It still would have sold just fine. People would have played the shit out of it. And people would have discovered it because it had, like there were Mountain Dew flavors. There were, like there was a lot of that kind of secondary, tertiary ways to get exposed about a game coming out. People used to watch television and see ads for video games. Now, like I've said before, like I don't see ads on damn near anything anymore because it's very easy to get those out of your life. And so it's harder to market to a savvier audience. It's the thing you run into when you're making a product for a relatively savvy audience that is somewhat ad supported, and all of your audience runs ad blockers on their web browsers. You're not going to make a lot of ad revenue that way, because you're preaching to an audience that kind of knows what they're doing. And I think that's, in some ways, as games journalism shrunk, the audience became, let's say, somewhat more savvy to what games are coming out and how to hear about them, and so I think people that really follow this stuff can still really know what's coming, and at least the bigger games. But yeah, I don't know. I think that this isn't necessarily something that propped up the AAA games industry or anything like that, but it gave, like, having a good foundation of large publications that speak to a more mainstream audience that you find in Google search results when you're searching for information about a game, and you get what you're looking for instead of just like a check prices link and fucking a bunch of ads and here's the strategy for, like all of the bullshit that you get now. I think just made it easier for a less connected audience to stay up on what was coming out, because you would find reviews of a game at the time a game was released, and there was this big push. But we just get into this larger conversation about the lack of a monoculture and how that is really, we are not the audience that we were 20 years ago. People have splintered out into a zillion different directions across everything, music, movies, everything, like, the radio used to determine who the big celebrities were going to be in music, who's the big stars. Like radio would just pump a fucking song, and, they had problems with payola, with labels paying radio stations to play songs in order to prop an artist up and make them seem like the biggest thing in the world. And it was this big fake machine that they had built. And that's been replaced by much smaller, but somehow more fake machines, like Spotify's algorithm or whatever. You want to get tinfoil hat about it. There's a statistic going around saying that, was it like I think Deezer said that somewhere between like 30 and 40% of all the music uploaded to Deezer every day is generated by AI. Now, if I'm Spotify, I would absolutely be creating AI music constantly that I owned and controlled. And I would be inserting that into playlists that were driven by algorithms at a rate that is much higher than real human artists. Because when my songs play on my streaming service, I keep the money. Anthrax Bees asks, who listens to this trash? Christ. Yes, Christ does listen to it. So who listens to this is people that just push play on a playlist and just leave it on. As we were talking about earlier with art designs in video games, music, I think, is even crazier. That you have people that just think music needs to be on and they don't really know why. And music is just something in the background that just happens. It's not something they actively engage with. They don't listen to the lyrics. They're not going like, okay, I really like this. Like they're just, it's just on. What's the popular? Put on whatever the popular shit is. Just put it on. Yeah, just just put it on. And those are the people that are going to be most susceptible to giving, spins, plays, whatever, to AI-based artists, right? It's like that shit is just, it's just background noise to them. They're not really engaging with music in a deeper way. And I think that's probably how this happens, right? Before the rise of AI generated music, you had people saying like, oh, well, Spotify is clearly taking money to insert artists into these algorithmic playlists more than some other artists. And so there's obviously something horrible going on here. And now I would think why, and Spotify likes to keep as much money as it possibly can anyway, in terms of like, how much they pay to artists as a streaming service compared to other streaming services. So why wouldn't you just generate a bunch of music on your own and insert it onto your service and drop it onto these playlists and keep more of that money for yourself? Right? To me, that seems like a fucking no-brainer. If you're the head of Spotify, master ethicist, why, kind of like, why wouldn't you do that? Yebo says a lot of Gen Z and younger millennials are romanticizing MP3 players and physical media now. I bought myself an MP3 player and just store all my music on it instead of all of these algorithms and apps. Yeah, there's definitely been a rise of people buying like digital audio players, like really nice ones that'll play, like they'll play back FLACs and all the cool shit, and they have like nice designs. One that has like a little, I forget the name of it, but it's like a little cassette tape graphic on it that spins, and like it's a really neat looking device. I keep coming close to almost buying one of those, and then I realize like I would never. The way I solved that problem was with Plex and putting my extensive library of audio on a Plex server that I can access from my phone, and so that ends up working out, I think, quite well for kind of tackling a similar problem. Plex Amp is a pretty good app these days for doing that, and it's very easy to hook up in your car, and you don't have to like copy everything to a thing because you're just accessing it remotely while you're on the road. And so that's been pretty cool. Anyway, yeah, I don't know. To get back to Grant's question, I think a lot of what he's saying is like societal in nature. It's not necessarily like if E3 still existed, if E3 came back on the other side of the pandemic and was still a trade show and was still supported by the video game industry, and there were still people left to cover it, I don't think that would really change much. Because I think the only people that ever really noticed E3 were people that were very much all the way down the rabbit hole to begin with. It's a trade show. People shouldn't know what E3 is. People shouldn't know what CES is or Comdex or whatever. Like the vagaries of this business, of any business, should not be spoken about to a larger mainstream audience. They shouldn't have to care. about this sort of stuff. And the reasons why E3 fell apart were, you know, like the pandemic tipped it over the edge, but like the relevancy of that show was already in question, even when we saw more AAA games being made. So I don't think E3 would have been the solution one way or the other. E3 is nice. E3 was a step in the right direction, at least to have, again, some kind of big stand tall moment for the video game industry, because that's what we're really lacking, you know? The mainstream press never gets to see that. The assembled video game industry has descended on Los Angeles to show all of their stuff, and here's a lady dressed up like Lara Croft to show us, you know, like there's the pomp of it all can sometimes mean something, but I don't know. I feel like, you know, like in a lot of ways, just whether it's just America or the world, I can't really tell. But there's a real like loss of innocence that's happened over the last 6 years. And I know it's not just me, but I think a lot of people just don't have fucking time for this shit anymore. There's a lot of shit happening. No one has time to fucking like, oh, I need to go watch this fucking press conference to see this game get announced. It's like fucking, just tell me when the fucking thing is out. When can I fucking get the thing? And I think that's like people are just fucking tired. You know? I think that's as big a part of all of this as anything else. Like people are assaulted by fucking garbage every minute of the day. It's just like, fucking just leave me alone with this shit. When is the fucking game coming out? Are you making is it what fucking come on. Anyway, I gotta get going. That's gonna do it for this show. I'll be back tomorrow. We'll talk some more. We'll play some games. We'll do some shit. I don't know. Come through and hang out over on Twitch. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Go subscribe to that. Well, how can you? I think if you go to, what is it? If you go to jeffgerstmann.com, does that get you there? I forget what URL directs where. Yes, jeffgerstmann.com goes to the YouTube channel. Go subscribe. Let's get this over 50,000 subs, people. Let's make it happen. But thanks to everyone, sign up for the show wherever, man. Like all the various podcast places where podcasts are stored and hosted. Do go check it all out. Head over to jeff.zone to check out the Patreon. Thanks everybody for your support. It keeps this hell train rolling. And I'll be back in the morning. We'll talk some more. And hang around. We'll play something. I don't know. We'll figure something out. I say Invincible? No, not Invincible versus. We'll figure something out. Have a good one, and I will see you soon.